Harry Jackson hauls garbage for a living, while his twin brother Daniel pops wine that costs more than rent. Except Harry's trash bags are actually saboteur bodies from his Black Ops missions. My man is a special ops captain with 12 classified kills, and his billionaire CEO brother has zero idea. Then Harry's entire team gets massacred by their own chief. Assassins crash their dinner with knives drawn, and Daniel wakes up from his nap ready to fight. Turns out Big Bro isn't just a CEO, he's boss of the Valhalla Yakuza gang. Both twins live double lives as a special ops assassin and a crime lord. Neither brother knew. I am Harry, and my only goal is to hunt down Chief Nicholas and every traitor who sold out my team. When the hit squad can't kill Harry, they stab Daniel twice and leave him bleeding out. Our boy finds his twin dying on the floor, protecting his identity. Daniel's last move: set up Harry's funeral in 2 hours. Make it so convincing that Harry attends his own memorial with a knife, and when Chief Nicholas shows up to confirm the body, Harry, disguised as Daniel, puts a blade to his throat, asking who killed his brother. My man is mourning himself while threatening his own murderer. Then he becomes Daniel permanently, takes over the Valhalla clan, and hunts Nicholas's entire task force as a dead man wearing his twin's face. Guys, absolutely demolish that like button harder than Harry demolishes assassins at his own funeral, and smash subscribe if you want the wildest twin identity swap ever. I need your support like Harry needs his brother back. Now let's see how a garbage man became the most dangerous dead CEO alive. Two brothers, same blood, wildly different lives. Big brother Daniel Jackson is a multi-billion-dollar CEO, casually popping open wine that costs several $100,000. Meanwhile, our boy Harry Jackson is hauling garbage for a living and can't even step into a restaurant without getting hassled. The kind of brothers where one is in Forbes and the other is in a garbage truck, both unbothered. Turns out, Daniel had been trying to arrange a meetup all day. Our boy declined, too busy with the trash. Daniel thought it's just garbage collection. What's one day away? Bro really said, it's just trash. Yeah, about that trash. Those weren't garbage bags. Those were the bodies of saboteurs his team had just neutralized. Because Harry's real name is Changi, captain of the Northern Operations Team, he reluctantly agreed to the outing anyway. He hadn't even hung up before a surviving saboteur lunged at him. Changi dodged, drove his elbow into the man's jaw, followed with one punch. Down. He patched up the rookie who'd been stabbed, cleaned the scene, then calmly told his brother he had an appointment, and headed off first. The way he patched up a stabbing victim and fixed his tie in the same breath. Cut to the restaurant. Our boy Harry had barely sat down before Daniel made his move. He wanted Harry to quit the garbage life, join his company, live like a human being for once. Harry shut it down immediately. Very satisfied with his current job, he said. Sure he is. Mid-conversation, Harry's phone buzzed. No number displayed, no caller ID. No good news ever came from no caller ID. He already knew something was wrong. He excused himself to the restroom and picked up. A trembling voice came through immediately. Captain, the entire team has been ordered to blackout. Everyone is getting expelled. Harry's expression changed. His mind snapped back to what happened just minutes after he'd left. The team was still at the site, chatting, celebrating like nothing was wrong. Then 6 cars pulled up. Chief Jang stepped out wearing a pleasant smile, said he had a small gift for everyone, reached into his jacket and put a single bullet into the new recruit on the spot. A gift. He called it a gift. Special forces poured out behind him, fully armed. Right then and there, Chief Jang declared the task force disbanded. Blackout order. Exterminate the whole team. Thanks for your hard work, folks. Back to the present. The voice on the line kept breaking. This happened because they were careless. Chief Jang had sold them all out. Harry cut him off and said he was coming back immediately to save everyone. Then the line went dead. Last words came through barely. Tell him to run. They're already on their way to him. He said run. Our boy started sprinting toward the danger. Different breeds. Back at the table, Daniel had dozed off waiting. He opened his eyes to find a group of armed men standing right in front of him. One already had a dagger drawn. Daniel really fell asleep at dinner and woke up to assassins. Most of us would cry. He pulled out a dagger. Different upbringing, apparently. Meanwhile, Harry was sprinting toward the restaurant with everything he had. He didn't make it far. He was stopped dead in the middle of the road. Someone confirmed his identity from a distance. That's him. Eliminate him. All of them lunged forward with knives at once. Our boy didn't even flinch. Not a blink. Not a step back. Just vibes and violence. He blocked the first wave clean, wrestled one man down instantly, struck another so hard he collapsed bleeding, slipped through the next like he wasn't even there, grabbed a leg, brought another one flat on his back, eyes wide with pure terror staring up at him. The last thing these men saw was a garbage man who was absolutely not a garbage man. Then blood suddenly splattered across Harry's face, not his. He released his grip, inspected the knife still in his hand. The blade's trajectory was almost too clean, too straight. Something wasn't adding up. Harry stripped off his shirt, raised the knife. Come on then. With his whole chest. I would have left the country. They all surged forward together, blades clashing, our boy still faster than all of them combined, slitting one man's throat clean. Mid-exchange, 4 or 5 men at once, and he was handling it. Then one blade caught his arm. Even legends bleed. That's what makes them scary. They don't stop. On the other side, someone reported the scene had been cleared. Jang asked gruffly, "What about Harry?" The subordinate checked his watch and said a squad was already engaged. A report should come in shortly. Jang pulled out a cigarette. One squad didn't feel like enough, and ordered a second squad dispatched immediately. Kill everyone. Leave no witnesses. Back with our boy. Harry's glasses had slipped off into a pool of blood. He had one of the men grabbed by the collar, knife dragged right up to his face, and calmly asked just one question. On a fine day like this, where are your families right now? On your way to work, are they? Blood splattered. Daniel watched from nearby and felt a small twinge of regret. Kill him now and he'd never get his answer. Then a device on one of the bodies started buzzing. Harry picked it up, curious. A mechanical voice kept repeating the same thing. Target Harry detected. Eliminate immediately. Daniel calmly wiped the blood off his face with a handkerchief. His expression shifted into something completely different. Who did you just say to kill? On the floor lay 2 defeated assassins. The dagger in Daniel's hand is still dripping. Turns out Big Brother wasn't just a CEO. The genetics of these brothers, my lord. He was Daniel of TS Financial and the Yakuza boss of the Valhalla gang. Nah, they messed with the wrong brothers. They really picked the one family where both options were the wrong option. Harry walked back into the dining room and stopped. Blood on the walls. Daniel sat there, head bowed, completely unbothered. "It's fine," he said, brushed his hair aside and looked up slowly. "Harry, are these all your customers?" They got in the car and left without another word. Our boy recounted everything on the way back. Daniel listened, clutched his head, and muttered, "I see." Robert drove in complete silence up front. Daniel sat in the back ruffling his hair like a man whose entire understanding of his own family had just collapsed. He suddenly looked up. "What did you call that thing again?" Robert raised one hand from the wheel. "HID. If that's too hard, just call it intelligence." Daniel grabbed the hair tie from his wrist and muttered happily, "Right, intelligence." He tied his hair back and asked with genuine curiosity if Harry wasn't just blocking North Koreans, but also doing assassinations on the side. At that exact moment, our boy made his own discovery. Daniel wasn't just a corporate heavyweight. He was boss of the Valhalla clan, one of the biggest criminal syndicates around. 2 brothers, both lived double lives. Neither had a clue. Daniel went completely speechless. Being twins, he'd always assumed his brother was doing fine somewhere. Turns out his brother had been a ghost operative with a kill list this whole time. A lot to process. Then our boy told the driver to pull over. Daniel immediately protested. Harry explained it plainly. Those men back there were just the first wave. Stay close to Daniel, and he'd be putting his brother in the crosshairs too. They'd hunt him until there was nothing left. Daniel stared at him. "Fine," he said, too scared. "Drop him off over there. Actually, drop him at the police station so they can find him easier." Harry told him sternly this wasn't a joke. Daniel pouted, stared out the window, and told the driver they'd arrived. "Get off." Our boy stepped out. The car door barely shut before he was already asking, "Brother, what do I do now?" Daniel answered in a low voice. Scene cut. Cut to a funeral hall. 2 large wreaths at the entrance. Black suits everywhere. Vehicles lined up. Security positioned. Everything arranged with the kind of precision that made it clear Daniel had done this before. Daniel stood at the center of it all, hands clasped behind his back, and asked Harry flatly, "Do I look like I'm joking?" In under 2 hours, Daniel set up a funeral hall. Daniel has a guy for everything. Daniel is the guy. Our boy stood there genuinely stunned. His brother had planned all of this in advance. Lucy approached and confirmed everything was ready, preparations complete, finished within 2 hours as requested. Then handed Daniel a framed portrait. Lucy didn't even blink. Lucy has definitely done this before too. Nobody in this story is normal. Daniel inspected it and turned to Harry. "Only if you die will everything be over. So I intend to let you die." Harry's own portrait stared back at him from the altar, surrounded by white chrysanthemums. Daniel explained it plainly. A performance, something learned from the Yakuza, used it to retire operatives or swap identities. Our boy asked if anyone would actually believe it. Daniel was honest. Of course they'd be suspicious. But when the younger brother of Valhalla clan's boss dies, powerful people show up. Those people become witnesses. Their presence makes it real. Harry asked if that was really enough. "As long as you believe it," Daniel said. "They'll be forced to believe it too." The funeral began. People came in numbers. Then a black car barreled into the courtyard, horn blaring like it owned the place. One of the Yakuza sidekicks crossed his arms and demanded to know what this was. Every VIP had already arrived. Were these people here for a free meal? Nobody answered. Inside the car, Nicholas was reading quietly. The twin brothers' dossier. He studied Daniel's photo, muttered something about moving house, then landed on Harry's profile. "Just a thug, huh?" The sidekick got tired of waiting and started pounding on the tinted window. "Can't just park however you like at a funeral." The glass was too dark to see through. Didn't stop him. Inside, Nicholas gave his instructions calmly. Final mission before deployment. Open the coffin lid and confirm the body personally. The man assigned was Mike. Mike pulled his cap low and stepped out. The sidekick looked him over with a plain face, a cheap work shirt, and sneered. "You wear that to a place like this?" Mike didn't answer. Mike is built differently. Mike does not dress to impress. Mike dresses to leave. The sidekick jabbed a finger at him. "Are you here for a walk?" "Shut your mouth, dog." Mike punched him clean in the face without changing expression, told him to circle the car another way. "Keep walking." The sidekick hit the ground. The Yakuza erupted. Someone crashed the funeral. That dog brought a crew. They surged forward. Nicholas's men didn't blink. Two stepped forward. One punch dropped the first Yakuza member instantly. Chokehold locked around his neck. Tight, clinical. Face went bright red. A few gasps, then nothing. The second was handled just as quietly. These weren't street thugs. Nicholas's task force. Northern Operations. Assassination Unit. Same world as our boy. Different side of it. Daniel and Robert watched from above. Robert took one look and decided it was time. Unbuttoned his vest. Took it off. Walked down the steps. His frame alone cleared a path. Tall, broad-shouldered. Each stride covering half the staircase. He walked straight up to Mike. "At a funeral, we only receive those who've been notified," he said evenly. "So stop." Mike tilted his head and stared back like he hadn't heard a single word. Before Robert could finish, a man swung a heavy hook straight at his face. "And that's the last good decision anyone in this courtyard made today." Robert didn't move. The voice stayed level. "Could you stop and drive off?" he continued, as if nothing had happened. This was Robert, head of Valhalla clan's security, underboss from Hanedong. They named him Motionless Yakuza because he simply does not move. Not for punches, not for feelings, not for anything. Courtesy was over. He swung one hand, grabbed the man's jaw, and squeezed, then hoisted him clean off the ground. The courtyard went silent. He dropped him. Locking grip forced him straight to his knees. One look at the man's face told everyone present they'd badly miscalculated. Robert rolled up his sleeves. The man couldn't move. Could only whimper. Robert tightened his grip. The crunch of bone echoed across the courtyard. Mike hit the ground and didn't get up. The others stood frozen, hands instinctively going to their own jaws. Then someone snapped, "You uncultured brute, don't get careless." Everyone charged. Robert didn't flinch. His frame moved like a blade between two attackers at once. Grabbed one man's face and held it. The other threw everything he had directly into Robert's cheek. Robert stood still and didn't retaliate. Encouraged, they took turns raining blows, screaming at each other to knock him out already. Robert waited, then raised one hand and sent a single punch back. The man felt like the sky had fallen on him, hit the courtyard face first and stayed there. The last man, still in Robert's grip, made his move, both hands around Robert's wrist, launching himself upward, legs locking around Robert's neck in a move designed to snap it clean. Robert's hand never left his throat, didn't stumble, didn't buckle, didn't move an inch. The man hung there squeezing with everything he had, going nowhere. Robert lifted him clean off his neck. Below, the other man was crawling back up, clutching his skull. His pupils shrank the moment he looked up. Robert hurled the first man straight into him. Both heads cracked together. They dropped and didn't move again. Every single one of them down, done. Nicholas sat in his car watching with a darkening expression. Not what he'd planned. He clicked his tongue, muttered that none of these men were any good, and told his driver to just open the coffin lid and confirm the body. Then he put his glasses on, straightened up, and stepped out. Buttoned his vest carefully. Walked up to Robert with the most diplomatic smile he had. Sorry about that. Seems there was a misunderstanding." He produced his identification. Harry's superior. The deceased. They'd only crossed paths once on the way here, probably causing some confusion. He had a few things he'd like to say. Robert paused, glanced up toward Daniel. Single slight nod. Robert stepped aside. "Follow me," he said politely. Robert said, "Follow me," after just dismantling their entire squad with his bare hands. The hospitality, the range. Nicholas went straight inside, lit an incense stick, and performed the rites, then stood staring at Harry's portrait on the bed of white chrysanthemums. His thoughts were elsewhere entirely. Was he really dead? And if so, how much did Daniel actually know? Was our boy gone, or was the household back in play? Cut to one day before the funeral. Harry had laid everything out, every detail. Daniel sat quietly processing it all, then muttered, so he started selling everyone out and caused this entire mess, all because of Nicholas. He pulled out a cigarette. "Should I fake my death too?" he asked. Our boy told him that wasn't necessary. Daniel didn't need to show his face at all. Just send Nicholas in, bowl soup, see him off. Harry had a different idea. He'd confront Nicholas personally, disguised as Daniel. And so our boy stood at his own funeral in mourning, clothes playing his brother. The moment Nicholas turned around, Harry was already there, small dagger in hand, voice completely cold. "Chief Nicholas." The man turned. "Yes, can we talk for a moment? Can we talk for a moment?" with a dagger in hand. The most polite threat ever delivered at a funeral. At his own funeral, Nicholas studied the face, looking back at him. The gaze was murderous and composed, the two qualities you never want to see combined in someone holding a blade at your eye level. A chill ran straight down his spine. Our boy pressed the blade straight to Nicholas's throat. Took this from his brother's corpse, he said. Explain it well or there'd be another body at this funeral. Who killed my brother? Harry showed up to his own funeral early, with a knife, as the host. Nobody was ready for that, including Nicholas. Nicholas was genuinely caught off guard. First thought, could Harry actually be dead? He composed himself fast, bowed his head, put on his most sorrowful expression. Host of the funeral, please remain calm. Harry passed, carrying out a national mission. He figured that was enough for a common thug. Harry punched him in the face before he could finish. Nicholas prepared a whole speech. Harry prepared one punch. One of them was more efficient. Blood from the nose. Harry grabbed him. What good was all that talk? Who killed his brother? He lunged with the dagger. Nicholas reached into his shirt. Lucy stepped in and pulled Harry back. Robert appeared from the other side, hand firm on Nicholas's shoulder. Time to go home, he said politely. Harry screamed at Nicholas to come back as he walked out. Nicholas left quietly, but his eyes never stopped working, studying the funeral host, measuring every reaction. It looked convincing, genuinely convincing. He'd be back. Moments later, Daniel's face went crimson. He slammed his fist and screamed, "Who killed my brother, you bastard?" Then spun around and asked Lucy cheerfully how that looked. Lucy adjusted his arm, corrected his shoulder angle, and gave a small nod. Our boy stared at both of them. What exactly were they doing? Daniel was already on the sofa with tea, thoroughly entertained. Great acting, he said. Did intelligence agents study performance too? Disguises, infiltration, all that? He set the cup down and sighed. At least it bought time. Nicholas was coming back. He told someone to put a tail on him immediately. Then turned to Harry and casually suggested he move in, arms wide open. Harry slung his bag over his shoulder and stood up. Daniel immediately shouted, "What? Where are you going, you idiot?" Our boy stopped, turned slowly. At the funeral, he said. When Daniel asked if that was acting, it wasn't. He genuinely intended to kill Nicholas right there. Daniel stared at him. Daniel thought it was acting. Harry never acts. That is the difference between a businessman and a weapon. So that's why you're leaving, going to find Nicholas and duel him one-on-one. He stood up and put an arm around his brother's shoulders. "I know what you're going to say," he said quietly. "I get it, but please don't do anything. Stay here, work with me. You're still alive, act like it." Our boy looked at him flatly. "You want me to live here and be your gangster?" Daniel replied gently, "Yeah, exactly. Gangster life," and said, "We are basically the same person doing the same job." Harry walked out. One of them was right. Our boy pushed his hand away and walked out. Daniel called after him, "Hey, Harry." "Nothing." Daniel grabbed his own head and groaned. Damn it, too dumb to be his twin. He turned to Robert, took the kids and followed Harry before he caused a disaster. Our boy hit the street and spotted the tail within seconds. Found Robert standing across the road making zero effort to hide. Harry tapped his own forehead and asked if Robert was planning to keep this up. "Direct orders," Robert said, honestly. 9 cars blocked the road further down, someone in the back quietly relaying everything up the chain. Nicholas was at the airport when the report came through. He processed it, ordered continued surveillance, and hung up. His mind was still at the funeral. That expression on the host's face, the man genuinely believed Nicholas was the killer, which meant Daniel knew something. Then a shadow appeared behind him. "Don't turn around," a voice hissed, an arm draped over his shoulder. The stranger told him calmly, if he wanted his daughter back safely, he'd better listen carefully. Nicholas's hand trembled. "What do you want?" he said. "I'll do everything. Just don't hurt her." The stranger grabbed him by the throat, then told him she just wanted her dad back. Nicholas turned around. His daughter Maria stood there grinning, fresh off the plane, absolutely delighted with herself. The man had nearly just had a heart attack at an airport arrivals terminal. He grabbed her suitcase without a word and fell into step beside her. Was she tired? He asked. Of course she was tired. Hard seats, no leg room, the whole thing. Nicholas smiled warmly. Next time he'd pick her a better seat. Maria hugged him tight. Mostly tired because she missed him, she said. Nicholas declared he'd just point at the plane next time and tell it to fly faster. Maria pulled back and looked at him. So that was her dad, the power of an intelligence agent. Nicholas laughed. He just did office work, paperwork, filing. She stared at him. You don't fight people. He waved it off. That never happened. Back at Daniel's place, he squeezed the cigarette pack and looked around the empty room. They're all gone, huh? Someone bought him a pack. Lucy told him flatly. She'd have someone downstairs handle it. She had to stay with him. Daniel groaned. This felt like being imprisoned. No, Lucy said, with the energy of someone on their 5th explanation. Nicholas already had people on Harry's tail. Just the 2 of them here. Going out alone was extremely dangerous. He dropped onto the sofa arm, so he couldn't go anywhere without a bodyguard. Correct. Shouldn't be alone. A thought crossed Daniel's face. Then let's do it this way. Elevator down to the 57th floor. Daniel held Lucy's hand firmly, two black suits standing directly behind them. He turned casually and asked if someone could grab him cigarettes. Lucy hesitated. Fine, she'd get them herself. Daniel turned to the two men and gestured grandly. This is your big sister. Say hello. Lucy spun around immediately. Stop right now. Both men snapped to attention. Hello, sister. Big sister. Daniel studied them for exactly 1 second. He grabbed one by the shoulder and asked warmly, "Our big sister gets more beautiful every day, doesn't she?" The man replied instantly, "Yes, absolutely. Very beautiful today, big sister." That answer came out so fast. That was not an agreement. That was a survival instinct. Daniel nodded slowly. Right, but why did everyone keep calling Lucy sister? The elevator went quiet. The silence of three people doing very different kinds of mental calculations. His voice dropped. "Are you two of Nicholas's subordinates?" The man tried to hold it together. "What are you talking about?" Then pulled out a blade and slashed hard. Daniel leaned back just enough to avoid it and turned to Lucy completely unbothered. Did she happen to have a spare knife? He'd forgotten his. Lucy pulled a blade from her skirt like it was a lip balm. Nobody reacted. This was clearly a Tuesday. Daniel reached over, took it politely. "Excuse me." Both hitmen dropped into stances. Daniel sighed. The first thug lunged hard and fast. Daniel tilted sideways, let it pass, slashed clean across his hip in one motion. Glanced at the cut and remarked the man had really dressed too nicely for this. The man is bleeding and Daniel is commenting on his outfit. Different priorities entirely. The thug turned back, snarling. The knife had sliced clean through his protective gear. Daniel shoved him into the wall before he could reset. On the other side of the elevator, Lucy was already on the floor, getting overwhelmed. Daniel shouted her name. Hitman raised his blade and drove it straight down into Daniel's shoulder. Daniel glanced at the wound with mild interest. "Lucy, you okay?" Been a while since he'd been stabbed. Almost forgot what it felt like. His mind was already working, though. These men were targeting Lucy deliberately. He counterattacked instantly. One slash across the knife hand. Man got half a scream out before dropping. The second thug turned back to Lucy. Daniel swung across to block. Thug spotted the dagger on the floor and reached for it. Lucy got there first. She kicked a weapon across an elevator floor and knocked out a trained hitman in the same breath. She has been underestimated for the last time in this script. Daniel wrenched the last blade away. Man pulled a second knife from behind his back and came in fast. Daniel grabbed his wrist and yanked him forward. Arms wide open, he said. "Welcome, dogs." Two blades sank into the suited man's body. His arm locked rigid. He cried out, "Wait, wait," but no one gave a damn to his request. The elevator just dinged. Doors opening. Two bodies. Have a pleasant evening. Guards downstairs turned as the doors opened. Daniel stepped out and asked pleasantly if they were doing their jobs properly. Hadn't noticed anything unusual up there. The guard spotted the blood immediately. "Director, your shoulder is bleeding." Daniel stopped him. "Anyone got cigarettes?" Stabbed in the shoulder. Two men down upstairs. And the only complaint was about cigarettes. Daniel's priorities have never moved an inch. The guard reached into his shirt. Daniel watched a dagger come out instead and froze for exactly 1 second. Lucy's jaw dropped. Lucy has seen everything in this story. Every single thing. And her jaw still dropped. That means something is wrong with her. Daniel grabbed the man's face and squeezed. He said cigarettes. This thing was too big. Too heavy. He trapped the dagger, drove it back, yanked the human skin mask clean off with his other hand. The assassin underneath smiled. "Director, don't pull it." He deliberately brought a big one, especially for him. Daniel hit him hard. The man launched backward several steps, recovered instantly, and immediately started doing knife tricks. The showmanship of this man in a hallway fight is genuinely impressive. Daniel studied the blade. This one was fast. "Forget the cigarettes," he said. "Just hand over the knife." A subordinate shouted from behind. "Director, Lucy is still here. Both of you step back." Daniel didn't look away from the assassin. "Hand it to me," he said quietly. "Don't rush straight at him." He took the karambit, told them to get Lucy out immediately and protect her. They moved fast. Lucy was already being pulled back toward the elevator when she called out, "Director, didn't he tell him not to open the door for strangers?" She is being evacuated from an active assassination attempt and still found time to say, "I told you so." Lucy is built differently. The elevator closed and rose to the 82nd floor. Daniel stood alone now, a blade in each hand, and advanced. He said, "What now?" He'd already guessed the lucky number. "Don't give him any more nonsense." The assassin scoffed and said, "Daniel, you're so talkative, my man. This assassin is not ordinary. He already knows Daniel's name. He is a member of the Nicholas Task Force, Core Assassination Unit. Nickname, Kevin, the Ghost." Daniel was caught off guard for just a moment. "You know my name?" His eyes dropped to his own wound, deep. This needed to end fast. Kevin replied smoothly. If he'd had the chance, he'd have loved to kill his brother personally. Then he lunged. But he only had one question. Was that thug Harry really dead? Daniel squeezed the blade and shot back. What, was he kidding? Someone got paid a hefty sum for this, didn't they? Kevin shifted tone without missing a beat. Fine, he'd change the question. Where is Harry right now? Daniel grabbed him and cursed. Were his ears full of something or what? Meanwhile, out on the street, our boy Harry and Robert had slipped into a narrow alley. The tail following them panicked at the sudden turn, broke into a sprint, rounded the corner. A punch came out of nowhere and slammed directly into his face. The scout hit the ground sideways and lay there. He was fairly certain something had just broken. Harry crouched down and asked pleasantly, "Chief Nicholas sent you. How'd you find him?" The scout sat up clutching his arm, pulled back his hood and winced. Nicholas wanted confirmation, alive or dead. Harry studied the face, looking back at him, and went completely still. "What did you just say? Could this be Ben?" The scout pulled his hood off the rest of the way and grinned. "Long time no see, Captain." Robert stepped forward in genuine surprise. These two knew each other. "Of course," Ben said, then immediately pointed his swollen wrist directly at Harry and shouted, "Uncle Gorilla, what are we doing about this?" "Look at it!" Harry grabbed his teammate's shoulder and held on tight. "Sorry, Ben, he should have been there. Only he survived." Ben's voice caught slightly. "Being alive is enough," he said. "You're alive." The captain too. "So from now on, next time you eat something good, you have to bring me along." Then he immediately shuddered violently and yelled, "Oh God, goosebumps. That's enough, stop it. Why didn't you say anything sooner?" Harry laughed. First time in days. Ben did that in 30 seconds with a broken arm and zero dignity. That is friendship. Ben answered with the energy of someone reporting minor inconveniences. "My stomach has a hole in it. My arm just got broken too. Just now, actually." He glanced sideways at Robert with mild suspicion. That guy wasn't exactly gorilla-level strong. So why did Uncle suddenly have that expression on his face? Robert had stepped away, phone pressed to his ear. Whatever was coming through had drained his face completely. Something very bad was happening. Back in the elevator shaft, Kevin moved. Daniel took a knife to the chest. Kevin's blade was impossibly fast. Daniel countered immediately, landing blow after lethal blow, giving him no breathing room, all while taunting out loud, "Hey, when it matters you should strike like that. Come on, come here." Inside his head was a different conversation entirely. The longer this dragged on, the worse it would get. His vision was already starting to blur. Kevin circled him. "Daniel," he said, "brother of Harry." Daniel lunged. Kevin stepped aside effortlessly. Daniel's speed had dropped and they both knew it. A thin wire flashed through the air. Kevin caught it and wrapped it tight around his arm in one motion. "Got to admit," he said, "for a thug, pretty decent." He brought the knife down into Daniel's chest. The blade hit the floor a moment later, slipping from Daniel's fingers. Blood dripped red across the tiles. Kevin stepped forward. "I'll ask again. Where is Harry?" Daniel slowly reached up and gathered his hair. "Don't people say you're not very perceptive?" he said casually. Then he cut his own ponytail off. Hair fell across the floor. Kevin stared at him blankly. "What are you doing?" Daniel lifted the clump of hair and held it up. "Does it take this for you to understand?" He smiled through the blood. "I am Harry, stabbed twice, bleeding out, and still managed to make it theatrical." Daniel really saved the best reveal for last. Kevin went completely still. "What?" He studied the face in front of him. "No. Impossible." Daniel gritted his teeth and laughed. Truly no eyes on this one. He charged back in, determined to finish it, or at minimum make Kevin believe Harry was dead. Kevin blocked and snarled that Harry couldn't possibly be this clumsy. "Finish him already." He raised his knife. Daniel drove a punch hard into his side. The wire cord tore his hand open and blood sprayed, but he didn't stop. He growled that those hairs earlier were a bit annoying. Kevin twisted to dodge just a half second of distraction. Daniel took it. One quick slash straight across his face. Kevin screamed and hit the ground, hands clutching his face, moaning continuously. Daniel stood over him. "Come on," he said. "Get up, keep fighting." Kevin crawled back up, shaking with fury. "You ignorant thug." He surged forward, snarling. Daniel grabbed his arm and locked it. The dagger kept chopping down relentlessly. Kevin's mind was starting to crack. Could it really be like this? The eyes staring back at him were completely bloodshot, overflowing with killing intent that had no ceiling. He was starting to believe it. The man in front of him was really Harry. Daniel was not acting. Daniel was not performing. Daniel was bleeding out and fighting for his brother's life with his brother's face and his brother's name. That realization cost him everything. His assault turned desperate, muttering over and over that he couldn't die here. He couldn't die. Daniel subdued him in seconds, controlled the dagger wrist, turned the blade back, drove it into his shoulder. Kevin screamed. One decisive slash across the abdomen. Kevin collapsed to the floor, face flooded with panic and pure terror, staring up at the man standing over him. This really was Harry. Daniel stood towering over him and said one final word. Kevin looked up at that icy gaze and scrambled backward. Don't come closer." Daniel raised the dagger. Kevin had almost nothing left. He gathered every last scrap of strength, swung a desperate defensive strike, and managed to drive his blade into Daniel's shoulder. Daniel collapsed. The dagger tip hit the floor inches from Kevin's neck. Neither man moved. Kevin lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling. Then he looked at the body on top of him. Harry. He shoved Daniel off and dragged himself upright. Outside, a car had just pulled into the courtyard. Our boy Harry jumped out before it stopped and ran straight inside. He found Daniel on the floor and dropped to his knees immediately, screaming his brother's name. He checked the wounds with shaking hands. His face went pale. His voice came out barely above a whisper. "Please, brother." Above them, Kevin was already moving, limping up the stairwell, one hand pressing his wounds, the other fumbling open a small notebook. He mumbled to himself as he climbed, "Harry, I killed you." He raised a bloody finger and drew a cross on the page. "I killed Harry." Harry hugged his brother and wept like he hadn't wept in years. He had never felt pain like this before. Later, in a large room, Harry told Robert they couldn't keep going like this. It wasn't just headquarters. Other groups across the region had already noticed Daniel's absence. They needed to choose a new representative. Robert stood up and said quietly, "The Valhalla clan without Daniel no longer exists." Lucy pushed back. So they were just going to watch it collapse? Daniel had given everything. Someone had to hold it together in his place. Robert wouldn't want it falling apart either. Robert cut her off and said, "You really don't understand. There is no one like him. No one can replace Daniel, the motionless Yakuza, standing in a room full of criminals with tears running down his face." Daniel made the unmovable man cry. Somewhere else, Harry walked out. Ben came sprinting after him down the hall. "Captain, Captain," wait, stepped in front and blocked the path. "Where are you going?" Harry's voice came out cold and flat. The wounds on Daniel's body were precise, deliberate, special task force, Nicholas's direct orders. He was done waiting. Most of Nicholas's teams were operating undercover up north, same as their crew had been. Find them and they'd find a direct line to Nicholas. Ben was getting anxious. He knew, but what exactly were they supposed to do right now? Harry's voice didn't waver. Nicholas did this to his brother. Tears built behind his eyes, but his face stayed stone cold. They were going to find every single one of them and wipe them out, same as what happened to their team. Cut to Pangeo, Techno Valley, the kind of place where everything is expensive and nothing is useful. Alan, chairman of ICT, was peeling a pear and already complaining. He stood up with the energy of a man personally offended by urban planning. Nothing to eat. All tailor shops, nowhere to dig up real money. Back in his day, a man had to swim through Seoul's big currents just to get a seat at the table, one of the 4 major organizations under the council. He wanted that seat. He walked to the railing, pulled out a knife, and started reproaching the man dangling below it. During all that time, he said, their department head had whispered nothing but meaningless sweet talk in his ear. Hadn't he? The department head hung from the railing with what little dignity he had left and protested. Sweet talk? What exactly was he supposed to have said? Alan calmly cut one of the ropes and tossed aside a pear slice that wasn't to his liking. The department head screamed, "Mr. Chairman, you don't mean that, right?" Alan informed him casually that Valhalla clan had been attacked. A friend in Seoul confirmed it, tangled with an unknown force, currently in chaos. No sign of Daniel anywhere. He cut another rope. Was the report accurate? He growled. The department head confirmed it with everything he had. Accurate. Completely accurate. Daniel had missed the council meeting entirely. Alan asked softly, "Anything else?" The department head was certain he'd told him everything. Alan chuckled. He understood completely. He cut the last rope. The department head plummeted. Screams all the way down. Alan turned to his men. Today, he announced, they were eating well downstairs. Alan dropped a man off a balcony and immediately made dinner plans. The transition was seamless. Below the balcony, the department head lay sprawled on the ground, staring at the sky. "Am I not dead yet?" Cut to the livestock market of Mahjong. Our boy moved through the quiet market under the lamplight, hand tight around his dagger. His mind was working. Nicholas's method. Never hide things where anyone would look. His men were trained the same way. One wrong move, and Harry would walk straight into them. He pushed open a door. Bodies everywhere. Slaughtered. Harry has seen a lot of rooms. This one stopped him at the door. That means something. A shaved-head man sat alone on the floor and looked up calmly. "Who are you?" he asked. "Your target wasn't Harry, was it?" Then he saw Harry's face. "You're still alive, badly wounded, but managed a weak grin anyway. Hey, clean that mess up. If it hadn't been Harry showing up, he'd be dead right now." Our boy crouched down. "What happened here?" The man sighed. "Nicholas, that bastard coordinated everything at once. Radio equipment, simultaneous hits across the board. People dropped like targets. Other companies cleaned out too. Same story everywhere." He grabbed Harry and held on, voice fading fast. Harry told him to stop talking, but the man kept going with whatever he had left. Harry didn't have the strength to take on Nicholas. Not yet. Not alone. He used his last breath to tell Harry to run. Harry has never once run. Everyone who knows him knows that. He said it anyway. Baldy then slumped down and went still. The word organization hung in the air. Meanwhile, at Valhalla clan headquarters, Alan had arrived with a plan and was already surveying the bodies on the floor with deep personal disappointment. "One of the 4 major groups under the council," he said, shaking his head. How utterly disappointing. Then Robert materialized from the other side, stone-faced, a thug dangling from each hand like luggage. He dropped them both and looked at Alan's crew with complete disinterest. "Fourth-rate gang," he said flatly. "Fourth group this week stupid enough to show up here." Alan's man sneered and pulled out a dagger. He'd been planning to be modest about this, but since they wanted to talk like that, fine, he'd play properly. His men fanned out and surrounded the room. Robert said he was tired. Robert who carried 2 men in one hand. Robert who doesn't move for punches. That kind of tiredness should have been the only warning anyone needed. Then Harry stepped forward from the crowd and moved to one side. The room shifted. Someone from Valhalla clan looked like they'd just had a nerve cut. Robert turned to Harry. "What's going on?" Harry replied quietly. "To avenge Daniel, he needed an organization. Couldn't do it alone. Could he take over the Valhalla clan?" Like it was a small request. Robert stared. "Are you sure?" He already knew the answer. He just needed to hear it. Alan had heard enough. He shoved forward and jabbed the dagger straight at Harry's face. "It's not just your family that's busy," he snarled. "Learn to wait in line." Punched to the face before he finished the sentence. Alan told a ghost operative to wait in line and got a punch as the response. The line was very short. Alan stumbled back, clutching his nose, cursing, then looked up at who'd hit him. "Isn't that Harry Jackson?" He stepped back. "Isn't that Daniel Jackson?" Neither answer was good. Alan's nose was already regretting the whole thing. Alan's men erupted. "Daniel? Could Daniel have actually returned?" Alan shoved 2 men forward. It didn't matter who it was. They had the numbers. They always have the numbers. The numbers have never once helped. 2 underlings lunged immediately. Our boy gave them no chance. One slash took down both simultaneously. Alan screamed at his men to grab their knives. They didn't have hands left to grab knives with. One came charging from behind. "Daniel, you think knives won't stab you?" Bang! Dagger flew out of his hand and buried itself in the ground. The man froze. Alan ordered a full retreat immediately. Back to Pangeo. Nothing left here. The most honest thing Alan had said all evening. Valhalla clan erupted the moment the enemy turned and ran. Director Daniel is back. Cheers kept building. "The director is here. The director has come to help us." Robert stood in the middle of it all and watched quietly. He'd believed Valhalla clan couldn't survive without Daniel. That had been his conviction. But listening to those cheers rising around him, something shifted. Robert who cried. Robert who said there was no one like him. Robert standing in the middle of those cheers, realizing he was wrong and being glad about it. Robert stepped up beside Harry and looked at him steadily. "You want Valhalla clan, don't you? If you want it, there's only one way. Harry, you must become Daniel, the brother who collected bodies, asked to become the brother who moved them. Same blood, completely different weight." Cut to a luxurious room across the city. A group sat around a banquet table, picking at food and trading rumors. Steve noted Daniel hadn't appeared in over a month. Charlie swore and said he'd told everyone that Thug was already finished. Emma swirled her glass and said it was sounding very tempting indeed. Jack said quietly, if Daniel was truly dead, then Valhalla clan was finished. It was Daniel's organization. Without him it was nothing. The empty seat at the head of the table said everything nobody wanted to say out loud. A group moved down the corridor toward the meeting room. A hand brushed the curtain aside. Our boy walked in with Robert and Ben behind him, sat down and smiled warmly at the room. "Hey," he said. "You all must have been so worried about him. Had he known he'd be away this long, he would have brought souvenirs." Harry was already slipping into Daniel's skin. The posture, the ease, the casual ownership of every room he walked into. Nobody in that room had any idea they weren't looking at Daniel. Daniel picked up a dagger. Lucy immediately reached over and adjusted his finger behind the blade spine. That position added real power to the edge. Did anyone at that table actually pay attention to details like that? "Someone certainly will," she said evenly. "If your opponent sat on the board, he needed to be far more careful." She laid it out plainly. The most notorious crime bosses in Seoul met with the board to prevent gang conflicts and encourage cooperation. In reality, they were all waiting for someone to bleed first. That was why the Valhalla clan was involved. That was why the board mattered. Our boy nodded. That's why he'd told her to be more careful. He paused. Honestly, he wasn't certain this was the right call. Why protect the Valhalla clan at all? He placed his finger precisely along the blade spine. He needed the Valhalla clan, powerful enough, stronger than anything else on the board, to make what he was planning possible. That was why he needed the board, to fulfill his vow. High above the city at a construction site, 2 men watched the burial work below. Seoul Police Chief James clapped Nicholas on the shoulder. "Truly admirable work," he said. "Exceptional skills." Nicholas replied modestly. "All thanks to the chief's support. The men were capable." James waved it off. No, it was Nicholas's operational genius that mattered most. Why else would those people end up buried down there? Nicholas gazed into the distance. "A sacrifice," he said quietly, "for a brighter future." James clapped again. "Well done. Truly special. Do the dirty work for a brighter future." That's exactly what they always said. The delegates were anxious lately, the northern mood unreadable, and personally, James had been completely swamped. People telling him to do this, handle that, non-stop. Then his hand landed on Nicholas's shoulder, and his tone dropped to ice. "But why?" he asked slowly. "Are you trying to make him so angry?" Finger jabbed into Nicholas's chest. Getting rid of a few pests was really that hard. Did he have any idea how many resources had been burned cleaning up his mess? Eliminate Valhalla clan. Eliminate Daniel. Did he not understand how influential they were? Nicholas bowed slightly. That was precisely why they'd brought it to the chief. All authority rested with him after all. James bellowed. His authority. Nicholas reached over and snatched the badge clean off James's chest. The rooftop went silent. James stared. What? Nicholas looked at the badge calmly. "Sir, you should know by now who the real boss is here. The chief's role was police chief. What they needed was a leader, not a puppet." He threw the badge into the dirt. Countless people could replace him. If he didn't like his role, he could get lost. A bodyguard grabbed Nicholas by the collar immediately. Some nerve. The police chief was his superior. James allowed a small smirk. Throwing his badge around like that, go fetch it back then. Nicholas slammed the bodyguard into the ground before anyone moved. One kick, stayed down. James's men froze. Gun barrel pressed against the police chief's head. "Should I bury you alongside them?" Nicholas asked pleasantly. James dropped to his knees immediately. Hands on his head. "Mr. Jang," he said. "He was wrong. Very wrong." Nicholas looked down at him. He'd buried his own men alive before. Did James think he'd lose sleep over him? The chief scrambled. He'd handle everything. Right people on the board. He'd make it work. Nicholas holstered the gun. "Get it done. No excuses." James was still trembling. "Yes, sir. Of course, sir." Nicholas turned to leave, then stopped. "Hey." James snapped to attention. "Yes, Chief Nicholas. I want to meet Daniel." On the way over, Robert had handed Daniel a stack of documents on Michael. Our boy flipped through them in the car, asked if all these were board members, and remarked it wasn't that many. Robert told him the numbers weren't the point. The connections were. Daniel set them down. Strong relations or not, he'd find the weak points. Just had to handle it exactly the way Daniel would. He pulled out a chair, sat down, and asked the room pleasantly whether they'd been talking about him. Emma lit up. "Daniel, is that really you? You even cut your hair." She almost didn't recognize him. Trying to make an impression, he replied, "Apparently not working." Charlie glanced sideways with the expression of a man who'd been robbed. Lucky escape. Someone must have stabbed him and missed. He'd thought his turn had finally come. Daniel picked up the chopsticks and looked across the table. "Not using yours? Could he take them?" Charlie gritted his teeth so hard his glasses shifted. Steve pushed them back up and returned to business. Mr. Daniel, while he was away, they'd had some discussions. Our boy smiled warmly. Everyone must have been so worried. Should have brought fruit or something. Steve stayed measured. They'd heard his younger brother had passed. It must have been difficult. He hadn't been in contact. Not like him at all. Charlie jumped in. The funeral was apparently quite something. Heard there was even a knife fight. Daniel nodded agreeably. "Oh yeah, he was curious about that too, actually." Steve set his glass down. "So to summarize, did Daniel currently deserve to keep his seat at this table?" Our boy stood up slowly. "If you know someone is in trouble," he said coldly, "why not go help them?" He pulled out a dagger and drove it straight into the table. Who exactly were they talking about? Valhalla clan was still standing. Did Michael think otherwise? Steve frowned, voice tightening. How could they accept those words? Was he trying to make enemies of all of them? Our boy let it land clean. He'd be blunt. Valhalla clan would not be joining Michael. Not now. Not ever. Do whatever they want. He walked out. Everyone followed. The car hit the road fast. Ben was already in the back seat fiddling with some device he'd found. Robert caught Daniel's brooding face in the rear view and asked the obvious. Michael was their rival now. What was the plan? Our boy stared out the window. Something felt off. A car swung out and blocked them dead in the road. Robert slammed the brakes and swerved hard. Ben shouted, "Which idiot was that?" 3 more cars spun in from the sides and boxed them completely. Doors flew open. Charlie stepped out already screaming Daniel's name, saying that at the meeting he barked, strapping a weapon to his fist. He charged straight at the car and put a punch clean through the window. Glass everywhere. Daniel's face didn't move. Charlie leaned in and said it loud and clear. As he'd said at the meeting, they could do whatever they wanted. So let him lead the Valhalla clan. Rewind slightly. Same car, same road. A few minutes earlier, Ben had been poking at the door panel and asked, "Team leader, sorry, director, if he turned this would the side mirror move?" Daniel said yes. Robert told him to stop blocking his driving and behave. He glanced at Daniel's expression in the mirror and brought up the real question. They'd just withdrawn from the main association. The entire association was their enemy now. Our boy said okay. He'd trample them all underfoot. But first, they needed to find the rat inside the association. Ben's head snapped up. A rat? Who? Robert asked why he thought that. Daniel laid it out. The funeral was chaotic. Killings. A knife fight. For a director's funeral that gets reported to the main association immediately. Standard procedure. But the killings inside Valhalla clan had nothing to do with the funeral. Someone fed that information deliberately. Ben grabbed his own head and groaned. Yeah, that was it. Goosebumps. Why did he feel completely lost right now? Robert's grip tightened on the wheel. So who is inside the main association? Daniel looked out the window. He'd already known for a while. That's why he'd kept his distance, he said, until he found the rat himself. Robert grew curious. How exactly was he planning to find them? Probably directly, our boy said. They'd already disturbed the nest. The rat would stick its head out on its own. Sure enough, Charlie was now standing outside the car wearing a mocking smile. Daniel, he called out. Come down now. Daniel didn't move. No gun? Was he going to make him drag that precious body out himself? Our boy studied him through the glass. Charlie and Valhalla clan had harbored mutual hatred for years. Hostility is always clear as day. This guy was a rat. Ben stuck his head out the window and addressed Charlie's fist on the shattered glass. Could have just opened it, you know. Cars were expensive. Basic manners. Take the dog claws off, throw a bone, and the dog leaves. Charlie stared at him. You the beaky from earlier? What did you just say? Ben climbed out and stepped right up to him. What was he going to do about it? First time in this car today. Good mood. Didn't want any trouble. Charlie sneered. Did he want a beating? He caught his eye. Besides, did Daniel want to work for him now? Ben blinked. Oh, so he was a subordinate now. Fine then. Fine. First stop, the repair shop. Someone owed him a window. The punch came before he finished the sentence. Ben's hand snapped up and blocked it clean. Charlie stared. Look at those reflexes. Was he a thug or what? Ben looked at his own hand with mild surprise. Oh, he'd blocked it. He studied Charlie with new interest. Hey, he liked this one. Then white cars appeared from the opposite lane. Charlie paused and looked over. What now? Were they throwing a party out here? Then he recognized the face stepping out and his expression shifted. What was going on? Steve said calmly. Representative Charlie. That's enough. Steve was Tenjiku Capital's representative, owner of Good 09 Blades. Charlie's mouth immediately started running. Oh my. If young Master Steve's men said stop, then they simply must stop. What now? Wasn't this enough already? Following him around all day and now crashing the party too. Tenjiku. He wasn't even sure they had any real backing. A hand landed on his shoulder from behind. They've got the cloud, a voice said cheerfully. Charlie turned around. A tall, middle-aged man stood behind him, smiling warmly. He said he remembered not so long ago Charlie had been crying about some scar on his back. He'd really grown a lot since then. Charlie froze and asked the man in the white suit, Michael, what exactly brought him out here? Ben immediately craned his neck back into the car and whispered to Robert. What was happening out there? Who was that uncle in the white suit? Those two looked like they were about to film a long-running drama. Could someone call it a cut? Robert replied quietly. One of Tenjiku's 9-Ways elite. Hadn't expected a 9-Way to show up here. Ben inhaled sharply. A 9-Way, Robert explained. Tenjiku's reputation had fallen considerably in recent years, but in the previous generation they'd been a top organization in Seoul. Their elite team had 9 members. They were called the 9-Ways. Ben processed this with genuine reverence. Anything involving gangster uncles at that level was seriously next tier. Outside, the reaction confirmed it. Charlie's men had gone completely pale, legs visibly unsteady. 9-Way Michael, that old man, was that really him? The senior surveyed the juniors around him with calm, unhurried eyes. These kids had no ambition whatsoever. Michael, CEO of Tenjiku Capital, leader of Godo's 9-Ways, ranked second in overall strength. Just the name alone was enough to make Charlie recalculate everything. He cursed under his breath. Why was Tenjiku showing up here? This was between him and Valhalla clan. What gave them the right to stick their noses in? Robert stepped out of the car and greeted him with a respectful bow. Senior, it's been a long time. Charlie's jaw dropped. What? Michael opened his arms wide. Hey Robert, when did you get so big? Robert replied evenly that he should have come to pay his respects sooner. Hadn't expected to run into him like this. Steve turned to Charlie and said firmly, Representative Charlie, Valhalla clan was being invited to Tenjiku as their guest. Charlie knew exactly what that meant. He snapped, damn it, suit yourselves, and that was the last dignified thing he managed to say before being hauled into the car, still screaming and cursing. Get off him. Damn it, get your hands off. Ben watched him get dragged in like a puppy and snorted. Someone approached the car quietly and said, Director Daniel, please ride with them. This car had a broken window after all. Daniel stepped out and looked around at the scene. Wow, he said. That escalated fast. All over already, huh? He laughed heartily. The attendant laughed back. Director, far too modest. Right this way, please. Michael suddenly suggested the two of them go ahead separately. He had some things to discuss with an old friend. Robert immediately said he'd ride with the director. Our boy waved him off. He was fine. He'd take Ben. Robert's head wouldn't fit in that car anyway. Ben immediately protested that he wasn't small either and made a production of it all the way to the car. The group split off and moved. Once the others clear out, Robert and Michael are finally alone. Michael glances at the shattered car window and cuts straight to the point. Charlie's gotten stronger, no question about it. Then he asks Robert why he still hasn't joined the Tenjiku clan. Robert doesn't even blink. Not interested. He's in the Valhalla clan now. Michael reminds him that his roots go way back with Tenjiku, and that there's still a seat with his name on it. Robert shuts that down too. Valhalla is his, and he's got unfinished business there. Michael just smiles and says that's funny, because as of today, Valhalla won't exist anymore. Robert goes completely still, eyes wide. That one actually landed. Meanwhile, Daniel is staring at Steve in a car. Our boy just walked out of their general assembly and pulled his entire clan with him. Steve asks if he's really sure about this because consequences tend to be permanent. Daniel tells Steve to stop dancing around it and just say what he wants. Steve keeps it simple. He needs power. He wants their support. Daniel leans in. What's the real goal, Steve? Steve opens his mouth to answer, and then someone knocks on the car window. Daniel takes one look outside, then back at Steve, and it all clicks. He knows exactly what Steve wants. He knows exactly who's standing outside that door. The 9 Swords of Gudo, right on cue. Steve says Daniel left him no choice. This was the only move he had left. Daniel laughs. Tell him he just wasted everyone's time. Then the laugh disappears, and he calls Steve that rat inside the association whom he is searching for. Daniel turns to the window and quietly tells his friend Ben to hold Steve here until he comes back. Steve's sidekick, who has been sitting there this whole time thinking he's part of the conversation, decides now is a great moment to open his mouth. Ben doesn't let him finish the sentence. One punch. Lights out. Sidekicks don't talk when bosses are speaking. Outside, the bald man cracks his knuckles and tells Daniel not to sweat it. This won't even take a minute. Meanwhile, Charlie sat in the car chain-smoking and seething. Steve's men, he muttered. Damn it, dragging in the 9 ways for this. A henchman asked genuinely, just how fearsome were the 9 ways anyway? Charlie looked at him. Who here was good at fighting, he asked. The henchman perked up immediately and raised his hand with a servile smile. His face went blank a moment later when Charlie slapped him clean on the head. Then take a few hits and find out, he snapped. This dog knew nothing and talked too much. Damn. He exhaled a long stream of smoke and stared out the window. How did Tenjiku manage to take over all of Seoul back then, he muttered. How were they still holding their seat in the main association? He grabbed the henchman's face and squeezed. I used to wonder the same thing, he said, voice dropping. Then I saw it with my own eyes. 3 members of Tenjiku walked into an entire organization in the Gangbuk area and dismantled it completely. There were 9 of them back then, 6 remain now, and with just 3 of the 9 ways, everything gets smoothed over quietly. Who in their right mind would dare fight them? The henchman asked. What if someone actually brought the 9 ways down? Charlie replied without hesitation. Then that person would swallow all of Seoul whole. Night fell, the moon came up over the lake. 2 men sat on the shore with fishing lines in the water. The low-voiced one spoke first. He was being kind here. Valhalla clan wasn't what it used to be. Just the hill behind the neighborhood now. That was Police Chief James. He laid it out plainly. Because of the upper-level project, Daniel had lost his brother. Valhalla clan had gotten dragged in, and now look at them. So Tenjiku needed to move first. Right now. Sitting beside him was Tenjiku Capital Chairman Steve of the 9 Blades. He replied steadily. Even so, there needed to be a justified reason to start a war. James pressed harder. Hesitate like this and everything would be taken. He'd always been too cautious. That caution was exactly why Tenjiku had ended up where it was now. If the former chairman were still alive, he'd have moved long ago. If the main association had the 9 blades behind it, nobody would dare make a sound. They had the sharpest blade in Seoul. Why hold back? He was honestly only saying this for the chairman's sake. Rebuild Tenjiku from Valhalla clan's foundation. Steve stood up slowly. He stared out at the dark water and said quietly, we'll make the Valhalla clan collapse. James smiled with deep satisfaction. That's right, now go. Steve turned and said his condition flat and clean. In return, let us participate in the project. The hook had found its prey. The police chief went quiet for a moment. Then he laughed, loud and obnoxious, like a man who had never once been told no in his life. He made it very clear where he thought Daniel stood. Somewhere far below his polished shoes. Not worth the same table. Not even close. Back at the docks, that cocky baldy had promised it wouldn't take long. He was right. It didn't. Daniel's fist settled the argument before it even started. A relentless flurry of punches wiped the confidence clean off the baldy's face. The man crumpled to the ground like a bad receipt. Daniel stood over the chaos and made one thing crystal clear. Valhalla clan wasn't falling while he was away. Whether someone had put these idiots up to it or they came up with this stupidity all on their own, they had guessed very, very wrong. He was here now, and today, Tenjiku will fall. The baldy somehow got back up. He spotted his broken glasses on the ground, looked at Daniel, and had the absolute nerve to act unbothered. He muttered something about Daniel not usually being like this, threw in a little comment about age, said maybe in 10 years Daniel would have a shot. The two goons standing behind him nearly fell over laughing. One of them reminded Daniel it had been a while since anyone watched him take a beating. The other just stared at him with that special kind of contempt reserved for people they considered already finished. The baldy snarled at his own men for just standing there watching and exploded forward. The attack came instantly. No warm-up, no posturing. The man was on Daniel before he could set his feet, forcing him to throw his hand up in a desperate block. The red-haired guy rushed in right behind, grabbed Daniel by the collar with both hands and drove him hard into the ground. The man hit like something that had no business being human. Daniel barely registered the landing before a kick came screaming in from the other side. The man declared that Valhalla would fall apart as he launched it. Daniel braced and took the impact on his arms. Then thunder arrived from his right. Another threw a punch that rattled the air itself. Daniel threw himself sideways just fast enough to avoid the worst of it. 3 of them. Rotating, flowing, hitting from angles that shouldn't exist at the same time. These guys are the 9 blades of Tenjiku clan. Daniel's mind worked fast. Each one was powerful alone. Together they were something else entirely. A closed quadrilateral, a perfect trap that tightened every time he moved. Attack one point and the other 3 would close in and bury him. But every shape has a weak corner. His eyes found the baldy. One straight punch, no theatrics. Just knuckles meeting face with zero apology. The baldy spat blood and went down. The quadrilateral broke. His team member moved instantly, rushing over to catch the baldy before he fully hit the ground. The baldy did not appreciate the help. He shoved himself upright and snapped at his partner for treating him like some fragile old man losing his mind. His partner said nothing. He turned around and launched himself straight back at Daniel instead. No hesitation, no ego, just pure relentless pressure. Daniel sidestepped clean. The attack cut through empty air. But this Tenjiku guy wasn't done. He shot his hand out, snagged Daniel by the shirt, and yanked him backward hard. Before Daniel could recover his footing, the lock was already on. Arms pinned, nowhere to go. The baldy saw his opening. He looked at Daniel with something between disappointment and contempt, the face of a man who expected more from his enemy, and drove a straight punch directly at his face. Back in the car, Steve tried to move. Ben's blade was already up before he got anywhere. Ben twirled the knife once and made it simple. He was assigned to watch over Steve today. Steve wasn't going anywhere. Then Ben looked out the window and said what everyone was thinking. What the uncles? Steve explained it plainly. They are Tenjiku's 9 blades. Everyone had written Tenjiku off, called it a dying organization running on old reputation, but everyone had missed one thing. A loud crash answered before he could finish. The car window cracked. Jean Wum came flying onto the hood, badly hurt, and very much done for the evening. Not far from the car, Chanho looked at Robert and told him their ties ended here. Robert said nothing out loud. He just thought about the 9 blades still standing. Steve sat in the car and delivered his verdict. They were no match. Ben ignored him completely, opened the door and muttered something about gangster uncles under his breath. Steve told him to sit down, told him nothing would change even if he stepped in. Ben paused, asked who exactly Steve thought he was stepping in for. Then he smiled. The kind of smile that meant he already knew something Steve didn't. If he didn't go, those uncles were going to die. Outside, Daniel was still in it. The Tenjiku men kept coming and kept getting dropped, but one of them was genuinely no joke. He caught Daniel clean and punched him hard enough to draw blood. Then he stopped, looked at the mess around him and told everyone calmly that Valhalla would fall. More men poured in behind him. Ben hit the ground running. One kick straight to the face of the nearest guy, sending him staggering sideways. The baldy caught his comrade, looked at Ben, and the question was simple. Did he want some too? Ben clutched his stomach and told them he was just kidding, then pointed helpfully and suggested they'd be better off dealing with whatever was happening right over there. Nobody laughed. One of the Tenjiku men turned back to Daniel, grabbed his arm and twisted. One clean motion. The crack that followed made even the Tenjiku guys flinch. The man noted it quietly. Dislocated. Useless now. The baldy started shouting to wait. Too late. The man was already launching a kick forward. Daniel reached out and caught the leg. Cut to the past. Harry and his instructor, mid-duel. The instructor had figured Harry out a long time ago. The man wasn't just strong. His body was built without flaws. Fighting, mindset, pain tolerance, all of it dialed to the maximum. The type that doesn't go down when hurt. Some people are just wired that way. The mind and body are so locked in sync that breaking one isn't enough. The only way to stop someone like that was simple. Bind the legs, pin the arms, take away the movement entirely. When the body can't move, even the strongest mind eventually cracks under the pressure. The instructor had found that exact weakness. He locked Harry's hand and applied the pressure. Harry's wrist screamed. The instructor looked down at him and said it hurt, right? Then told him it wasn't good enough yet. They were going again, back in the brawl. Tenjiku men were flat on the ground, groaning. The baldy was drenched in cold sweat, staring at Daniel like he'd just seen something that shouldn't exist. He asked if Daniel was even human. Steve moved to step in, then stopped. A memory surfaced. The police chief, sitting back with his fishing rod, asked Steve what exactly he intended to do about Daniel. Steve had looked confused. The chief had smiled and dropped it casually. Daniel had a twin brother. A brother known simply as the Hitman. Made Daniel a little different from your average thug, didn't it? Then the chief had yanked his fishing rod hard and shouted about whoever missed the catch. Steve stood there now and quietly asked himself what that brother's name was again. Back on the ground, one arm hung limp. The baldy knelt, teeth grinding, and told Daniel this was going too far. Daniel pulled his fist back. Then a shout cut through everything. Steve walked forward and said that was enough. Stop here. The baldy looked up, confused about what Steve thought he was doing. Steve stepped in close. Something had felt off from the very beginning. Even when Daniel was on the ground taking hits, something didn't sit right. He put a hand on the man's shoulder and said it plainly. Time to talk. Just the two of them. Harry Jackson. Some of the men looked straight at him. The eyes, the movement, the way he carried himself. Twins. Steve said it bluntly. What happened at the association, and what just went down here? None of it matched Daniel. Not even close. Daniel shrugged him off and asked coldly what the difference was. Said Steve already knew who he was. Then gripped his own wrist tight and asked one quiet question. Could he even keep living like this? Steve frowned slightly, looked at him, then shifted gears. Director Daniel. They could negotiate. Daniel said nothing for a moment. Just thought about it. Ben's hand went up across the way. Big smile. Ceasefire signal. He called out asking what the two of them were even arguing about and announced a temporary ceasefire to everyone, like he was hosting a dinner party. Uncle Michael huffed, deeply unimpressed, and both sides sat down. Steve opened by admitting Valhalla had been underestimated. Michael walked over to the Baldies group and asked if they were doing all right over there. Note that Ducky Young had dropped all of them. They admitted it honestly. The kid was a monster. They never stood a chance. Daniel asked coldly what exactly was being negotiated. Ben spotted Robert standing there looking completely untouched and immediately called him out. Uncle Gorilla, not a scratch on him. Then leaned over and whispered whether anyone was sure these guys were actually weakened or if reinforcements were about to show up mid-celebration. Robert said flatly, he was a senior, that's why he was fine. Sean breathed out and said that was probably fine. Then, Ben reminded everyone to stay focused. Steve produced a confidential file. Tenjiku had received a direct order to wipe out the Valhalla clan. Who issued that order and exactly why? All of it was spelled out in the document in his hand. He put it on the table and made the offer straight. He would hand that information to Valhalla. In return, Valhalla and Tenjiku would become allies. Two birds, one stone. Tenjiku gets stronger. Valhalla gets a back. Daniel stood up and killed it immediately. If that was the bargaining chip, they could forget it. Then asked plainly what would happen if he just wiped out Tenjiku right now and took the document anyway. Michael laughed, told him to go ahead and try, said the kid was getting cocky. Robert stopped him, told Daniel to reconsider. It was a good offer for both sides. Valhalla would gain Tenjiku's trust on top of everything else. Daniel rubbed his forehead, took a moment, then said it straight. The way they all operated made him sick. Tenjiku or whatever they called themselves. Gangsters, all of them. His voice dropped lower and harder with every word. Trust. 2 words built on trust had cost him his comrades, cost him his brother, and everyone in this circle knew exactly what he meant. Robert reminded him quietly. Daniel grabbed him by the collar, teeth grinding. Tell him one thing clearly. Call him Daniel, not Harry. Ben shoved himself between them before it escalated, told them both to calm down, asked if they were seriously about to start round 2 right now, said finish the matter first. Steve picked up the file and walked toward the fire. Daniel watched him, his steps slowed. Steve held the stack of papers over the flames and told Daniel to reconsider the offer. Daniel told him coldly to just hand over the file. That was the only way any trust was happening here. Steve didn't blink, told him to watch his words. No duplicates existed. Daniel drew his dagger. Robert tried to hold him back. Didn't work. Daniel's voice came out loud and completely finished the room. He was finished negotiating. Finished with trust. Finished with all of it. Tenjiku would hand over that file. No conditions. No deals. From this point forward, Valhalla gave the orders and Tenjiku followed them. Every last blade would fall under Valhalla's command. And Steve was coming with them as a hostage. The baldy snapped. They called them Valhalla bastards. Tension spiked immediately. Michael looked at his men getting reckless and ordered the 9 blades to stand down. Nobody moved. He stepped forward himself, grabbed Daniel's arm, asked quietly if this really needed to go that far, then reached over and pulled the file straight out of Steve's hand, apologized to Steve without breaking stride, turned and faced the room. Michael, leader of the 9 blades, going to Valhalla as hostage in Steve's place. Daniel looked at him and asked flatly whether the head of Tenjiku could really be compared to Steve. Asked if Michael even had the authority to make that offer. Robert stepped in. 9 blades were Tenjiku's official representatives in the underworld. It was sufficient. Daniel said he already knew that. Robert pushed further. said the real Daniel, wouldn't be acting like this. Daniel turned to Ben and told him to watch every move Robert made, nothing else. Robert stood still and said nothing. He was starting to think Daniel was considerably more complicated than expected. 5 years earlier, interrogation room, recording started. Harry, white test team, confirmed member. Harry confirmed it. The HID task force handled North Korea operations. Harry had just come back from one. Now he was sitting under a microscope. Colonel Max leaned forward, asked about the mission. Classified. Colonel Max didn't take that well. Laid it all out. Harry had entered North Korea, lived among them, worn their uniform, and somehow his information was never verified or flagged. How? Harry said all his information was erased prior to insertion. Nature of the mission. Colonel Max shifted. Fine. Superiors. Unit. Anything. Same answer. Everything confidential. Give him a secure line. Colonel Max stood up. Done with patience entirely. Said the North Korea operation sat badly with everyone. Harry had an obligation, a duty, called it a simple misunderstanding that just needed clearing up, then leaned in close and snapped his fingers. His words carried weight here. If he said Harry was a communist, then that was exactly what Harry was. Harry wasn't spotless either. The smart move was to confess and let it settle quietly. The door opened. A man walked in and introduced himself calmly. Chief Nicholas, Special Intelligence Unit. He had heard one of his people was being held and came to sort it out personally. Colonel Max handed him the file and asked what the trouble was. Internal counterintelligence was his department and he made that clear. Nicholas bowed slightly and told him he must be joking. Internal spy. This kid was family. Colonel Max was not amused. Asked Nicholas if he thought this was a game, put a cigarette in his mouth and said it again plainly. The kid was a spy. Nicholas immediately produced a lighter and lit it for him, then told the colonel respectfully but very clearly that a mistake had been made. Said it slowly so nothing got misunderstood. The kid sitting in that chair was not an internal spy, not a communist, not anything of the sort. He was family. And Nicholas was saying it one final time, so there would be no regrettable misunderstandings going forward. He removed the handcuffs himself, told Harry to get up. They were leaving. Colonel Max was not mildly annoyed. He was furious, growled about reporting Nicholas straight to the higher-ups, demanded the guards arrest both of them immediately. The guards didn't come. Colonel Max ran to the door and stopped dead. Every single guard was flat on the floor. Outside, Nicholas walked out shaking his head, complained that he had barely just returned, and his superiors were already chewing him out because of this. Harry said it wasn't his fault. Colonel Max had been deliberately pinning the spy label on him from the start. Nicholas gave a dry laugh and looked him over. Said nobody would believe this kid was a spy, just by looking at him. Told him all he needed to do was say he surrendered and move on. They trusted each other like family. Then looked at what Harry was wearing and said plainly that if his own daughter or Harry ever turned out to be actual spies, he would eliminate them both personally and save everyone the trouble. Harry smiled slightly, asked if Nicholas thought what he just did to Colonel Max, his direct superior, was exactly appropriate behavior. Nicholas shrugged, said it was all under the state anyway. He wasn't losing sleep over it. The car door flew open, and Ben's guys spilled out immediately, started mocking him before he even reached the vehicle, asking what took so long, calling him a spy, saying they were all starving and it was time to eat. Ben was dressed and groomed like a North Korean militia soldier, grinned at Harry and told him welcome back home. Harry sat holding the photo. The memories came back all at once. Then the doorbell rang. He told whoever it was to come in. Robert entered and reported that Ben was already watching Michael's movements as requested. Harry rubbed his head and said thanks. Said slowly, there was something else that needed discussing. Something about what had just happened. Harry asked if it was about Tenjiku. Robert moved without warning, grabbed him by the collar and yanked him up. Said he was the one who made the mistake. Said Daniel couldn't be handed over to Harry to manage. Then said it straight. Harry is Harry. He couldn't become Daniel. Nicholas sat in a restaurant with his phone to his ear. Asked his daughter if she had eaten. Listened. Told her dad was eating right now and that she needed to remember to eat properly too. Said he wasn't nagging, just worried. Chief James walked in through the door, spotted him, and waved. He sat down, looked around, licked his lips, and immediately complained. Said he knew plenty of good places. That's why he had messaged Nicholas first. Why did it have to be this place? Nicholas told him to sit down. Went back to his daughter briefly, told her no, actually the place was fine. Dad would call back later. His daughter hung up. James grabbed a spoon and chopsticks and asked casually whether the daughter had just come back from studying abroad. Nicholas skipped the small talk. Told James the matter with the association had concluded successfully. James looked up like that wasn't the answer he wanted. Said the dishes were already prepared and all they had to do was eat, but somehow they had stuffed themselves through the whole meal and still had nothing to show for it. Nicholas opened his rice bowl, said the association were thugs at the end of the day, poured the rice into the communal bowl and asked if James intended to keep dragging this out. James wiped his hands with a napkin and said, here they went again. Said they had barely mixed the rice and he was already worked up. said he had blood on him over this whole thing. But those people weren't easy to handle. Their manager was capable, he admitted that. But it wasn't as simple as Nicholas was making it sound. Nicholas cut in, said they were amateurs at this. It needed to be handled professionally. The One Sing project was launching soon. He was going to have to meet the association directly. James looked up, asked about Sung Men, and if not him, what about his people? He laid it out plainly. If they wanted a foothold in One Sing, managing the association was where it started. Let the counselors taste the benefit early. That way everything would move smoothly when the time came. James scooped braised beans into the communal bowl, said Harry and his people, already suspected by headquarters of siding with the Three Strike Group, had been dealt with. So with this opening, the manager and the new members could finally step up and prove themselves. Nicholas bowed his head and thought about it quietly. James kept ladling rice into the bowl and muttered that it was such a mess. The mixed rice sat in the bowl, vividly colorful, piping hot, steam rising off it steadily. Daniel sat buried under stacks of documents, clutched his head, said it out loud slowly, like the weight of it had finally landed. He understood now. That was the reason. And because of that reason, everyone had to die. He picked up the small team photo and stared at it. The pain came quietly, and all at once, the doorbell rang. Daniel didn't even look up, just told Robert to come in. Robert stepped inside, took one look at Daniel's face, and apologized for the interruption. Reported that Ben was monitoring Michael as instructed, said it plainly, and waited. Daniel kept his head down, told him he'd done well. Robert said simply that this was Valhalla's business. Across town where Ben was keeping watch, the atmosphere was considerably lighter. Ben called out cheerfully that nothing unusual was happening. Said Valhalla wasn't bad at all, actually. Getting downtime like this was genuinely nice. Nearby, Steve spoke quietly, apologized, said it was all because of his own mistakes. Old Michael waved it off immediately, told Steve not to call it clumsy, said this situation hadn't come from the organization's judgment. Everyone was simply following that judgment. Steve had trusted it and followed it. The result hadn't gone as expected, but that didn't make it a mistake from the beginning. Some of the men smiled. Michael told Steve to relax, use the time, get some proper rest. They will meet again soon. Ben listened to the whole exchange and leaned over with a grin, asked if Michael was more of a nephew than a boss. Michael laughed, said of course he was Tenjiku's boss, then asked lightly what they were supposed to do if they were causing trouble for their host. He reached over and casually lifted the lid off a plate of food to look inside. Said simply that this was his choice. He accepted it. Ben blinked, pushed back a little, said it seemed more like the boss's choice. Whatever the boss said, that's what happened. In the end, Michael had been brought here under those exact circumstances. Michael closed the plate slowly and said he saw it a little differently, asked whether Valhalla was really that kind of organization. Said if it was, Valhalla was genuinely disappointing. Ben said nothing for a moment. Older Ginger really was spicier. Back in the office, Robert said it plainly. He thought he had made a mistake, said he shouldn't have handed Valhalla over to Harry in the first place, told him to drop it. Harry pushed his hand away and snapped back, asked if Robert thought he was a child, said either hand it over or don't, asked what exactly Robert was trying to protect here, said he needed an organization for revenge. That was the entire reason Tenjiku had been exposed the way it was. So what was the problem? Robert said it bluntly. The approach was wrong. The first step was that Harry had to actually become Daniel. Harry frowned, said that was exactly what he was doing. He was impersonating Daniel. Robert shook his head, said if he were really Daniel, Valhalla wouldn't be operating the way it currently was. Valhalla was an organization built entirely on trust in Daniel. That meant every single person inside it needed to believe, not in Harry, in Daniel. Harry brushed the hair off his forehead and stared at nothing for a moment. Trust or methods? He asked quietly what exactly he was supposed to do. Robert looked at him. Even now, the association still thought the kids were just playing around. Daniel turned to Robert with a flat expression, asked what exactly belief had to do with anything. Said in an organization, the boss gives orders and everyone follows. Simple. As for methods, he would use force, crush them like the thugs they were. Asked if there was a problem with that. Robert loosened his tie, took off his vest, told Harry to show him first how those kids played. No more words. He launched forward immediately. A hard knee drove straight into Robert's midsection. Robert blocked it clean, grabbed his collar and slammed him into the ground. Daniel hit the floor and frowned. That was not a light throw. Robert stood over him and asked if that was all. Asked whether Harry was supposed to be an intelligence officer or not. Daniel drove a heel straight up into Robert's jaw. Robert flew back, he sat up slowly, touched his jaw, looked at the bruise already forming. In the detention room, Michael had been talking for a while. He laid it out for Ben methodically, an organization that uses pure force to make people submit. Who would genuinely follow something like that? Ben kept calling them thugs. Did he actually know what that word meant? Michael said it plainly. They were men who lived by their fists and believed in each other's pride. People like that gathered around shared interests and started wars. Some fought side by side, some buried knives in backs. That was what thugs were. And somewhere inside all of that, people who truly believed in each other emerged. The ones who stayed completely loyal. Back in the office, tables and chairs were overturned. Papers everywhere. Daniel sat on top of Robert, fist frozen midair. He held it there for a moment, then exhaled, stood up, walked out without a word, thought to himself quietly that he had been wrong. Handling things by force wasn't the issue itself, but their method wasn't simply about who hit harder. Michael finished his point, said if an organization ran purely on overwhelming force, then it wasn't a gang, it was an army. Ben nodded, said, "Yeah, an army." His phone rang. Ben glanced at it, stood up, and waved at Michael with a grin, told him he was genuinely entertaining, said they would talk more next time, told him to enjoy the break. Michael asked whether Ben was supposed to be supervising him. Ben said bluntly that he didn't think Michael was going anywhere, but the other guy, nobody could really be trusted. Still, he really didn't feel like using force to keep Michael in line. Daniel stepped into the hallway and met Ben coming out, gave him the new direction without any build-up. From now on, they are doing things differently. Build a new unit, capable people only. Go reach out to the contact they had discussed previously. Professionals over there who knew exactly how to operate. Do it their way. 1 week, the association gets handled within that time. Robert is lying on the floor, hand resting behind his head, drifting back 4 years ago to a snowy night at his tiny restaurant where he was just a cook trying to get through the day. That's when Daniel walked in, covered in blood, flicking a lighter like it is completely normal, casually lighting a cigarette in the middle of a restaurant. The audacity. Robert told him not to smoke. Daniel apologized, said it is a force of habit, then pointed to the 2 unconscious men already sprawled across the floor and mentioned they probably don't count as customers anyway. Hard to argue with that logic. Robert just sighed and told him to leave before things got complicated. Too late, the door burst open and a whole crowd piled in. They took one look at the disaster inside and lost their minds. Apparently they'd heard a rumor about this place and thought it was a joke. It isn't. The mess on the floor is Crimson Gang, and the man leading this little visit is Joseph, their gang leader, who had one very important question for Daniel. Why did Valhalla stop working with Tenjiku? Scared of ending up like their dead boss? Daniel's response is simple. The restaurant owner said no stray gang members. He's a regular, so he's fine. Joseph stared at him, genuinely couldn't tell if this guy is bold or just completely brain dead. He grabbed Daniel's face, voice cold as steel, and made it very clear, you don't mess with Crimson. This pretty face of yours, worth good money on the market. What a waste it would be. Daniel just tilted his head and said one thing. Crimson? Ridiculous. A blood-curdling scream ripped through the restaurant. Blood hit the wall. Joseph is screaming every curse word he knew, demanding to know if Daniel had any idea who he just picked a fight with. Daniel clearly did not care. Daniel is completely unbothered. Valhalla, that's all he needed to say. Call every single Crimson member if you want. It didn't matter. Joseph's boys rushed in, took one look at their boss, clutching a hand, missing 2 fingers, and immediately forgot about any tough guy posturing. They were begging him to get to a hospital. Joseph is calling Daniel every name in the book as they dragged him out the door. Silence. Robert finally spoke. Asked Daniel why he'd pick a fight with Crimson over nothing. Daniel pushed his hair back and flipped the question entirely. Those guys showed up because of Robert. Then he looked around the restaurant. Dusty walls, no proper menu, barely functioning, and said what everyone was already thinking. This place isn't really a restaurant. Robert clearly set up shop here specifically to bait the kind of people who'd come looking for trouble. Then Daniel hit him with a friendly smile and offered to help. Robert asked if he even knew who they were dealing with. Daniel cheerfully said, it didn't matter. Valhalla, case closed. Then, completely unprompted, he reached forward and told Robert to tie his hair back because it is a mess. Handed him a hair tie off his own wrist like they were old friends. Took it, said thanks. Also mentioned Robert's cooking is genuinely terrible and he should stop immediately. Very serious about that last part. Robert lay there later staring at the hair tie on his wrist, wondering if any of this is the right call. Meanwhile, Joseph is absolutely not over it. 4 years and he still felt that hand. He stared at the missing fingers, and something snapped. He shot up and rallied every man in the room. Valhalla just lost their leadership. They were weak. Now is the time. 50 men ready to go, answering in unison like a well-trained choir of revenge. They hadn't even started planning when something slammed into the door so hard the lookout flew across the room and landed flat on the floor. Everyone froze. A tall man stepped through the kicked-in doorway, face completely stern, eyes scanning every single person in the room. All of this, every bit of it, started because of a spray-painted wall. The manager is losing his mind over a wall. Specifically the spray paint on the warehouse building that had absolutely no business being there. He wanted a name. Someone gave him one. John. Somewhere else, Ben's ears perked up. That John. Last anyone heard, he'd smuggled himself out, disguised as an exported laborer just to disappear off the radar. Clever cover. Clearly it didn't stick. The heavy warehouse door swung open. John hadn't found the traitor yet, so no, he hadn't gone back to Russia. His real name is Avaka, Russian mobster. Bad news in human form. He stepped in and immediately a stranger was in his face. Dagger out, launching straight at him before a word is said. Daniel shouted his name just in time. Then he held up a USB drive and said 3 words. Here to negotiate. Then 1 more word. Devil. John stopped cold. His expressionless face dropped to the USB. Then slowly, he reached up and removed his hard hat. Devil. That is his nickname, Devil in human disguise. Looking at him, you could almost believe it. Back in Crimson territory, the mood is very different. Joseph spotted John walking in and immediately demanded to know who this white dog is and why he is ruining such an important day. His boys rushed the intruder without a second thought. They were met with a gun barrel. Dead silence. One thug went pale as a sheet. John answered the awkward silence by smacking him across the face. The man hit the ground and didn't get back up. The next one pulled a dagger. John pointed the gun at him, watched the smirk crawl onto the guy's face, then delivered a punch so clean, the man is spitting teeth before he even registered what happened. The rest of Crimson collectively decided to swarm him. 2 grabbed his arms, 1 locked his head. Someone actually shouted, "I've got him," with genuine confidence. John bit down on the bicep of the man holding his head. The scream is not dignified. The man lost his balance. John recovered the dagger, straddled his opponent, did something with it that produced a blood-curdling scream that made everyone in the room take a small step back. Joseph is trembling, actually trembling. John grabbed him by the hair, shoved him down and pressed the dagger to his head, then said something that sounded almost philosophical. Everyone has a devil inside. They just use it to excuse their own weakness. Joseph is wailing, demanding to know who John thought he was. John pressed the dagger harder. The same devil lives in you too. Right here. That's when Ben came sprinting in. He took 1 look at the carnage, smiled like a proud father, clapped his hands together and told John, "Great work, truly, excellent effort, but maybe it is time to stop now." Joseph is on his knees, voice shaking like a wet dog, demanding to know who sent John and who he even is. John told him calmly, "Valhalla," then pulled out his phone and called it in like he is filing a routine report. Director, Crimson Gang, all accounted for. Current manpower on his end, 1 person. Joseph heard that last part and lost it completely. Cursing, spitting, kneeling on the ground reminding everyone that Valhalla is not some grand international organization like they seem to think. Daniel heard the report and simply said, "Well done." Ben is significantly less relaxed. His eyes hadn't moved from the dagger in John's hand since the conversation started. While Ben is busy babysitting John, Daniel has a separate issue. He got on with the director and immediately raised an objection. "Eren, talented, sure, but trust, absolutely not. The director isn't hearing it. Good skills, only works for money, straightforward enough." Ben backed Daniel up. "Isn't Eren a clanist? That is a problem regardless of skill level." The debate is cut short. A youth lunged from behind, dagger aimed and ready, moving fast. Daniel's blade is out before anyone finishes a sentence, blocking the strike clean. He grabbed the attacker and got right in his face. "Who are you? Who sent you?" "A spy from the north." Right here in the middle of everything. The room got very tense, very fast. This pale, good-looking kid attacking Daniel is no ordinary thug. Alex, codename Steel Weasel, anti-South Korean teenage spy, fast, precise, and extremely dangerous for someone who hadn't finished growing yet. Daniel blocked every strike while quietly sizing him up. The kid is young, too young, but the ability is genuinely there. He knocked the knife handle hard and said casually, "Been a while, Steel Weasel." Alex froze, then he immediately got offended. How did this man know that name? Every single person who'd ever known his identity had been eliminated personally. He made sure of it. 3 years earlier, Jiarang Industrial Complex, right on the border. A crisp officer stood before a line of teenagers and made things very clear. This complex existed to generate profit for the North. Products made here crossed south and fed southern stomachs. That is clanism, the South's dirty little system. And these kids were going to bite straight into the throat of it. The officer is a major from the Reconnaissance Bureau, running a brand new special task force, 4 years of long-term southern deployment planned, 12 total infiltrations on the schedule. Alex is his prized asset. The speech is simple. Southern kids looked at them like stray dogs. That is fine. Wild beasts don't need respect before they attack. The unit had a name, White Belly Cutters. Teenage spies trained by day as complex workers, by night as infiltrators. Sewing, combat, survival, all of it crammed into kids who had nothing to lose. The plan isn't exactly taken seriously by the higher-ups. It is experimental at best. Then one day, a driver spotted Alex walking through the complex and called out his codename like an old friend, then pulled out a red cake box. Choco Pie. Alex saw it, and every bit of spy training temporarily left his body. He is on it immediately, eating faster than is dignified. The driver laughed and told him to slow down. Share with friends too. The teenagers at Gyeongsang went absolutely feral over choco pies. For kids raised with nothing, one chocolate-covered cake from the south hit like a revelation. Boxes started appearing on the floor. Finish them and move on. That is the reward system. Brutal training paid in the forbidden taste of southern clanism. For Alex, who came from the slums, it hit different from everyone else. A choco pie is the first thing the South ever gave him. The irony of that wouldn't hit until much later. 2 years of training and the higher-ups suddenly decided they were out of time. The officers watching the dagger drills from above got the order mid-week. Deploy now, no more waiting. 2 years of planned ideological education compressed into basically nothing, because someone upstairs wanted results immediately. One of them quietly suspected the Gyeongsang complex is getting shut down. Whatever the reason, they needed something to show. Fast. The next morning, the driver showed up looking like he'd seen a ghost. Alex noticed immediately. Asked what is wrong. The driver fumbled, spotted Alex's bright grin, and pulled himself together enough to promise he'd bring the goods that night. Just wait. Alex waited. Night came. Everyone boarded the vehicle, heading south. Uniforms on, moving in darkness. Mission officially begun. A teammate spotted Alex still completely absorbed in a snack mid-operation and whispered at him to hurry up, then casually dropped the information that in South Korea he could eat whatever he wanted whenever he wanted. Alex looked up, eyes wide. Is South Korea just full of this stuff? He is practically vibrating with excitement. Then a man with a knife walked up to the vehicle door and said it plainly. First, deal with the driver. Alex flinched, stopped, asked them to wait. What about the driver? The one who promised to come back tonight. And the other passengers? The man frowned. No time for this. What is Alex even thinking? Alex didn't answer. The dagger came out. Blood sprayed across the dark. The whole group went pale and silent. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Alex looked around at his teammates and asked, very calmly, if they hadn't followed his orders. Then he walked over to the vehicle door and knocked, asked the driver very politely for a ride down to South Korea, said it suited him well down there. Behind Alex, every single teammate is dead. Somewhere else, the officer is flat on the ground, face completely white, voice cracking as he begged Alex to stop and asked how the others had ended up like this. By 3:30 a.m., every member of the new special task force is gone, instructors included. All of them died at Alex's hands. Alex reached up and peeled the human mask off his face. At 3:55, someone unexpected walked in and interrupted. The officer screamed in horror. Who is this? What is happening? The real Alex had apparently only just arrived. After that night, Alex is officially labeled a traitor and flagged as a surveillance subject. The one who filed the anomaly report is Harry. Back in the present, Daniel had his blade pressed clean against Alex's throat. The kid isn't scared. He is actually impressed. Complimented Daniel's knife technique, said it is straight out of North Korean training but picked up suspiciously fast, then put both hands behind his head in the most unbothered mock surrender imaginable. Fine, he gave up, then immediately asked if Daniel is here to drag him back north. Daniel said no. Alex blinked. Genuinely surprised, said that is the first time he'd ever heard that. So if not that, why is he here? Daniel said it plainly. A deal. Alex reached into his pocket, pulled out a choco pie, peeled the wrapper slowly, and let the word roll around in his mouth like he is tasting it. Deal. Deal. Now that is a very clanist word. He liked it very much. Spit it out, comrade. Over at the Red Crow Hotel, things were significantly less civilized. A liquor bottle connected with a manager's skull, and Charlie is already screaming before the man hits the floor. 3 hotels shut down in half a day. 3. Charlie had been soaking peacefully in a hot tub, and now he is standing dripping wet in a robe, yanking his manager backwards by the hair, demanding answers. The district gave the order, the manager explained desperately. No choice. Don't just follow orders from above like a dog. Go find out what's actually happening. Figure it out now. Then an underling burst in out of breath and delivered the real news. Crimson Gang. Completely dismantled. By Valhalla. Charlie froze. So all of this, the hotels, the shutdowns, everything is those Valhalla dogs. He immediately called everyone together. They were going to Valhalla. Right now. The crew assembled in the corridor, looking ready for war. Then someone sitting nearby started laughing loudly at them, just pointing and cackling at the whole group like he is watching a comedy show. One of Charlie's men is already cursing at the stranger when the screaming starts behind them. Kevin had one of Charlie's men by the hand, cranked the wrist back at an angle that made everyone nearby wince, and cheerfully apologized. Said he'd bent it a bit too far. Left hand eating from now on. Then twisted harder just to make the point. Charlie didn't hesitate. He charged forward to free his man, growling that he is absolutely not caught off guard, just that lately too many kids had been acting up. Kevin smiled like he'd been waiting all day for this. Nicholas grabbed Charlie's arm before things escalated further, apologized smoothly for the boys being a little rough around the edges, then pulled out a cigarette, took a long drag, picked up a file like he had all the time in the world, and suggested they all just sit down and talk it through nicely. Hotel business has complications, right? Surely this could be resolved with a few words. Charlie laughed in his face, loudly, genuinely, said look at this guy, shutting down his hotels on his own territory and now asking him to sit down for a friendly chat. What exactly is being asked here? He pulled out a chair, sat down anyway, and summarized the situation himself. So what you're asking is for me to spare your life. Kevin absolutely lost it, cackling, saying these thugs never looked right to him, and that if Charlie actually tried that he'd be dead before he finished the sentence. Charlie leaned forward and reminded everyone whose turf this is. Nicholas took off his glasses, looked Charlie dead in the face, said he came to ask for a favor. This time he is asking nicely. Next time he wouldn't be asking at all. He'd be hitting. Got it. The temperature in the room dropped several degrees. Charlie said nothing. Charlie leaned back and gave Nicholas a biology lesson. Wolves, smaller than bears, smaller than tigers, but sitting right at the top of the food chain anyway. Not because of size, because of structure. Pack hunting, shared survival, and one alpha leading the whole operation. That leadership force, that is what Charlie represented. Large organization, pack structure, unbeatable alpha at the top. That alpha being Charlie himself, obviously. Nicholas listened politely and asked what exactly Charlie's gang actually did. Charlie looked confused by the question. Nicholas spelled it out slowly. Small hotels down every alley in the city. Bits and pieces of this and that on the side. Then he pulled out a gun and said it even more plainly. At the end of the day, they were thugs, and Nicholas's people were hunters, who'd come to Gaerong specifically to hunt thugs, not amateurs. Pros. Charlie's hand clenched, eyes went cold, asked if Nicholas is looking for a fight. Nicholas took a long drag of his cigarette and told him to relax, then slid a stack of documents across the table. Charlie grumbled the whole time he opened them. Then it went quiet, read through the densely packed pages once, then held the papers up and stared at Nicholas. He really wanted to let them eat from this? Something this good, shared with them? Why? Charlie already knew the answer. If anything went sideways, his people would take the fall, while Nicholas walked away with the bigger cut. What possible reason is there to trust this and sign on? Nicholas said it simply. Business. His side would provide the manpower. All pros. Charlie tore the entire stack in half, then kept tearing, threw the shreds on the floor and told Nicholas straight, stop saying the word pros until they'd actually been verified. Show him what these pros could actually do. Then they'd talk. Meanwhile, Ben is having a completely different kind of terrible day. He is sitting outside a fast food joint, phone in hand, complaining to nobody in particular that the meeting time has come and gone, and there is still zero sign of anyone. He called Daniel, asked where on earth he'd disappeared to. Daniel's voice came through asking if he could hear clearly. Ben says yes and is immediately told to wait there, stay put, and he'd get a call once they moved in and made contact with the Iron Weasel. Ben paused. Iron Weasel? Is there a problem? No answer, just the group moving into a corridor. Two men spotted them immediately and couldn't believe what they were seeing. Alex pulled out a small knife, took aim, and before the man in black even finished his sentence about unauthorized entry, a cold streak of light crossed his throat. Blood hit the wall. The whole group froze. Alex grinned at the survivors and offered them a very simple choice. Don't want to die? Start talking. Ben is watching from a distance and asks Daniel one question. Is this kid actually useful? Daniel said yes. Ben remained unconvinced. Isn't he a bit young? The answer came through the open door. Daniel had just stepped through. A dagger flew straight at his face. A bald thug came screaming out behind it, yelling for Daniel to die. Daniel sidestepped, grabbed the hand and snapped it. The bald man hit his knees wailing. Daniel stomped his head once. The entire room jumped to its feet. Ben is still on the phone casually mentioning that this side is pretty impressive too. Daniel would be surprised if he saw it. Ben then brought up that when Daniel went north, Ben himself got shipped to US forces in the Middle East, teaching English. Daniel told him he'd already said that. Ben ignored this completely, kept talking while Daniel had a fistful of someone's collar and a room full of daggers pointed at him. Then Ben said, you know what's interesting? Some unfamiliar kids just rolled in on motorcycles nearby. The line crackled. Daniel told him to just say it. Ben explained. A guy named Deadline. A sword for hire, pure and simple. Whoever pays gets his full obedience. That's why they called him a servant. Daniel raised an eyebrow slightly. This guy would do literally anything? The man he is squeezing is trembling so hard he could barely make sounds anymore. Ben confirmed it. Pay him and it gets done. No questions. Meanwhile, Alex is cutting through his side with brutal efficiency. Daniel patted him on the shoulder mid-chaos and told him to keep moving. All of Gaerong's front groups needed to come down. Now that they had a recruit, time to map out every major organization underneath Gaerong as well. Alex looked around at the narrow alley carnage surrounding him and said he'd wrap this up and regroup shortly. Daniel said move fast. Then an axe flew directly at his head. He swung his arm and caught it. Keep talking, because Gaerong is already moving, faster than expected. A man in a white suit stepped forward, furious, demanding to know what is happening. Were these people from some investigation team? Did they actually dare to meddle with Getarong? He looked at Daniel like that is the most absurd thing he'd ever witnessed. Daniel held the axe and looked back at him. Daniel said it coldly. "Clear them out, Alex. Just amateurs." Alex had a choco pie in his mouth and a knife in each hand, and launched himself into the crowd anyway. He nodded. It looked like it. He'd deal with them quickly. Two of the sidekicks immediately shoved a man back and absorbed the hit. Then one came straight at Alex head on. The blade flashed past his face and sliced the choco pie clean off his mouth mid-bite. Alex paused, said that is sudden, then revised his earlier assessment. These guys were pros. Daniel clocked it immediately. Army trained, so Garang had pros on their payroll too. The man in the white suit smiled and confirmed it. These pros were a personal gift from director Charlie, clearly a different caliber, even surprised himself, and by now they'd probably already reached Valhalla. Daniel's people weren't the only ones who used their brains. He suggested Daniel go check on his organization and his boss. He'd likely find them beaten to death. Why did Daniel look scared all of a sudden? Daniel's mind is already running the numbers. Had Nicholas directly intervened, or had he actually allied with Charlie? Either way, this had escalated fast. Alex interrupted the internal crisis by holding up two fingers. Double. He wanted double pay. These were pros, so the rate went up. Non-negotiable. Daniel blinked. This kid really had the most unbothered nerve of anyone he'd ever met. Alex is still midair haggling over his fee when he added that he had one genuine question. As a North Korean spy, he is actually curious whether he could take down South Korean pros, then immediately attacked one to find out. The man in the vest came to meet him. Alex dodged the knife, locked the opponent's weapon hand with one hand, spun his small blade with the other, and made one clean, decisive cut. The man made a choking sound and went down. The second man rushed in to help and didn't escape either. Alex shouted that he'd cleared them out and told Daniel to move his legs already. Daniel said of course and moved. But the anxiety is already building. Nicholas is tangled up with Georong, and it has happened impossibly fast. How did it escalate this quickly? Back at Red Crow Hotel, Charlie looked over the newcomers Nicholas brought and laughed. Asked if this useful-looking guy would actually follow orders or pull the same amateur nonsense as his own people. Nicholas pushed up his glasses and answered slowly. Director Charlie, do you know why they were professionals? Simple. As long as the money is there, it didn't matter whose orders they followed. Daniel got the information mid-sprint. The upcoming guy isn't just a pro. He is the top pro among pros. Daniel ran faster. Valhalla needed him right now, and he is already behind. Valhalla's front entrance looked like a small army had shown up, because one had countless people, every single one armed, advancing hard. Tonight Nicholas intended to clean Valhalla out completely, blood included. In a nearby car, Kevin is having a moment. He adjusted his clothes and told Nicholas he still couldn't believe they were tangled up in guild schemes. Nicholas pretended not to follow. Kevin swept his hair back and growled through the whole thing with a provoking look on his face. Then got to the real issue. He is sure he'd take out Harry. Absolutely certain. So why is Harry still breathing? Why? Nicholas looked at him with the flattest possible expression and pointed out that maybe the problem is that Kevin hadn't actually confirmed the body, brought it back, verified the kill. If he'd done that, none of this would be happening right now. Didn't he think so? Something clicked behind Kevin's eyes. He slapped his palm like a man who just solved the mystery of the universe. That is it. Bring the body back. Why hadn't he thought of that before? He started laughing, maniacally, said he'd bring it back. Yes, that is exactly what he needed to do. Harry had clearly left a psychological ghost in this man. Nicholas stared at him for a long moment, then just sighed, and told him to let it go. Talking to Kevin is genuinely exhausting. Meanwhile, Daniel's situation had gotten significantly worse. His reflexes were the only thing keeping him alive as he blocked a motorcyclist's powerful swing clean. He looked at the people surrounding him and processed the situation immediately. Cornered, then couldn't reach him. Nicholas is already deep in this mess. Too many new variables appearing faster than he could calculate. Then Deadline came roaring back with blinding headlights. Things went from bad to genuinely dangerous in about 3 seconds. Quick note on Deadline's background. Afghanistan. The most hostile war zone on Earth. Desert wasteland. Endless sand skirmishes. Death around every corner. To survive it, Nomad Battalion 66 built a special action unit. US SOCOM Special Operations Team. Fast, precise, brutal. After securing targets, the battalion reported back efficiently. Target eliminated. Weapons and ammunition secured. One member of the strike team stood out immediately, decked entirely in allied gear that nobody could trace back to any legitimate source. Nobody asked where he got it. The results spoke loud enough. But results in a place full of variables required a very particular mindset. Find a way to survive. Every time. No exceptions. After grabbing supplies, Deadline headed straight to the black market exchange point. The door opened into something that looked exactly like a dragon's den. Fully armed men everywhere. Tigers and wolves packed into one room. Extremists on one side needing weapons to sow chaos. Hungry opportunists on the other side supplying arms for personal profit. Deadline walked in like he belonged in both categories simultaneously. After the exchange, Deadline walked out immediately. Life is full of variables. This is the most dangerous war zone on Earth, and if you didn't anticipate the variables, you became one of their victims. What the extremists didn't know is that the bag Deadline left behind contained more than just money. It also contained a time bomb. The desert lit up like daylight for about 2 seconds, then just smoke and silence. The extremists were busy celebrating their haul when Death Silent came back. Against all odds, still breathing. Crowbar in hand, he put the first one on the floor in under a minute. His back is blown completely open, blood everywhere, and he is still moving through that camp like the explosion is an inconvenience. In this desert, the food chain is simple. Act like predators and be ready to face one. Death Silent tore through the entire extremist group that night. His battle horse, his crowbar, and absolute zero mercy. By morning, only screams had been left behind. He is the most dangerous variable of all. Back in the present, that same Death Silent is cutting through the wind as Deadline bore down on Daniel at full speed. Daniel analyzed fast. Left hand iron rod, targeting weak points, incoming hard. Then the motorcycle headlight snapped off. Complete darkness. Daniel immediately understood the tactic. Eyes transitioning from bright light to pure dark needed time to adjust. Deadline had been shining that light directly at him the whole time, specifically for this moment. Daniel swung the rod around him blind, working on instinct alone. Deadline didn't need time to adjust. He adapted to the dark completely and delivered a killing blow. Daniel partially blocked it. It didn't matter. The weapon in his hand snapped clean in two. His arm took the remainder of the impact, and the pain is immediate and serious. He clutched it, feeling it tremble. Superior opponent, no question about it. Back at Valhalla, the situation isn't prettier. Both sides were tearing into each other, and Valhalla is losing ground fast. Captains were panting, screaming at their men to hold the line and take out the Gyorong dogs while quietly admitting to each other that neither of them had actually met their own director or leader. Yet, fantastic timing for that particular discovery. Then through the middle of the entire brawl, a lone figure strolled in casually, bespectacled, completely unbothered, pushing a Gyorong fighter out of his way, like he is clearing a path through light traffic. He clicked his tongue and wondered aloud where Boss Nicholas had gotten to. His name is Anderson. Military top-class professional, the man leading Nicholas's special agents. He looked at the chaos around him like it is mildly disappointing. Valhalla's captain is screaming at his men not to waver. Anderson had already assessed the entire battlefield in about 4 seconds. Anderson threw one punch. The Valhalla captain spat blood, crashed to the ground, and did not get back up. Clean, decisive, clinical. The man had no chance to even think about fighting back. Anderson turned to his men behind him and sighed. Come on, they were just 2 thugs. Move up. Gyorong surged forward with completely renewed energy. Valhalla's side went into immediate panic. Destroy them all. Then a punch came from nowhere and flattened a Gyorong man so hard his guts nearly came out through his back. Blood and flesh. Horrific scene. The kind of punch that makes everyone in a 50-meter radius stop what they're doing. The man who threw it straightened up and said softly that he just wanted to rest. But Robert asked, so here he is. He tightened his gloves. His name is Michael. Gyorong collectively lost their composure. Why is Michael here? Nobody had accounted for Michael. Anderson noticed his men suddenly shaken and frowned slightly. Didn't have to wait long for the explanation. Michael's eyes found Anderson across the chaos immediately. Pointed at him, said he didn't look like he is with this crowd. What a shame this is their first meeting. Anderson stared back somewhat bewildered. Michael took off his white vest with visible excitement and announced he is on Valhalla's side today, temporarily. Chief of Security, just for tonight. Anderson took off his glasses slowly, called him a nuisance, then asked with genuine irritation why Michael kept showing up to these childish games when his son is already sending money for his care. Didn't he have somewhere better to be? Background on Anderson, formerly Special Military Police, now dual-headed Special Action Team leader. Background on Michael, the kind of man whose appearance alone completely changed the math of an entire battlefield. Gyorong had come in expecting a clean sweep. They had not expected Michael. The balance had shifted and Anderson knew it. He put his glasses back on. Tenjiku's era of glory had one name attached to it, more than any other, Michael. The sharpest sword that brought Tenjiku to the top, the gang's pride, the man whose name alone carried weight in every corner of the underworld. Tonight he is fighting for Valhalla. Technically a fake allegiance, practically full of fists. He looked around at the battlefield and shouted, asking where all the real men had gone because all he is seeing is weaklings. Nicholas's henchmen exchanged terrified glances. Why is Tenjiku's old man on Valhalla's side? Nobody had planned for this. Nobody had a contingency for this. Anderson had zero interest in the panic around him. He looked down at these street thugs with complete contempt, then turned his attention back to Michael and asked what exactly he is planning to accomplish here. Followed it up with the hospital comment again. Son sending money, retirement, why these childish games at his age? He pocketed his glasses and got ready for a real fight. Michael took one look at Anderson and immediately clocked that this man is not your typical underworld type. Different background, different training. He'd teach him that the underworld isn't as simple as he seemed to think. He didn't even finish getting into his fighting stance. Anderson spotted the opening and hooked a punch straight into Michael's jaw before he is ready. The left hand followed immediately to the face. Then a heavy knockout blow drove straight into the stomach. Boxing versus judo. Clean technical combinations landing before Michael could establish anything. Michael looked genuinely stunned for a moment. Anderson sneered, called him an old man, said what nonsense is this about teaching lessons. Then scratched his neck with open disdain and made it simple. This isn't about knowing each other. It is about skill. Anderson had been expelled from the military for violent and unruly behavior. That kind of expulsion didn't happen to mediocre fighters. Every punch he'd thrown tonight proved exactly that. The ferocity is evident in every single strike. Meanwhile, Daniel's situation remained a disaster. His arm is numb from that last hit. Not just bruised, the kind of numb that quietly suggested something inside might be broken. He'd already burned too much time here. Standing still isn't an option. He had to move, now. Deadline answered that thought by revving the throttle and charging straight at him. The bike left the ground entirely, launching into the air to come down from above, engine roaring through the night like a predator that had finally cornered its prey. Daniel looked up. No weapon. One possibly broken arm. Zero good options. Daniel read the attack instantly. Linear assault, motorcycle speed, predictable trajectory. He went for the bike's frame. It failed. The bike dropped fast and Deadline drove the iron rod straight into Daniel's broken arm. Each strike landed with devastating force. Then he gunned the engine and came in at extreme velocity like he intended to ride straight through Daniel. Then hit the brakes hard. The bike tipped forward, and Deadline used that exact moment of distance to lunge straight for his head. Now Daniel had a broken arm and a bleeding head. He stood still and counted. That is 5 hits taken. 5. Each attack came with a new variable stacked on top of the last, and the whole time Nicholas and his crew were out there moving while Daniel is stuck here going nowhere. If this dragged on any longer, the entire plan would fall apart. Daniel's eyes changed. He got quiet inside, told himself to stay calm, observe closely, find the optimal response and commit to it. Deadline answered by spinning the rear tire hard against the road. Smoke and dust billowed up instantly, swallowing the space between them. Vision gone, completely obscured. Cunning, genuinely unpredictable. Daniel had to admit that much. He couldn't see anything. The attack is coming. Left or right, impossible to know. Variables couldn't be fully predicted or controlled. That is the whole point of them. But not all variables were bad. Light footsteps approached from behind. Then a very familiar voice said calmly that from where he is standing, this didn't look very professional. Is this really how a pro handled things? Daniel turned. Robert had arrived. Daniel is genuinely astonished. Before he could even ask what Robert is doing here, Robert cut him off. How about a little help from an amateur? The darkness got a little less dark. Back at Valhalla, Anderson is quietly recalibrating. He muttered that the old man is tougher than expected. Michael had absorbed a serious beating and is still standing completely upright. Anderson watched him and ran the numbers internally. How is a gangster built this way? Dragging this out made no sense. End it quickly. Simple enough plan, except who is finishing whom remains an open question. One moment of lapsed focus and a punch nearly connected with Anderson's mouth. He dodged it barely in time, then he felt it. Something is completely wrong. That attack speed did not belong to that body. Not even close. Michael's strength had been obvious from the start. But that speed, that is a different problem entirely. Anderson's expression shifted slightly. The old man isn't just tough, he is fast. Anderson decided to create distance. Michael didn't allow it. He is already right in Anderson's face before the decision finished forming, and he is in a foul mood on top of it. Government hounds had been snapping at their gangster ranks lately, and that kind of thing put Michael in a particular state of mind. He finished that thought and drove a punch straight into Anderson's gut. It hit like a sledgehammer. Anderson left the ground entirely, flipped backwards, face going pale before he even landed. Out of options immediately, he went for his firearm. Michael knocked it out of his hand before it came up and hit him again. Then grabbed Anderson's face. Anderson trembled, tried to speak, produced only a groan. Michael's grip tightened, and he asked very quietly if they looked like easy prey. Why did this man look down on them? Did he really think siding with a sly snake is enough to beat him? Every word came with more pressure. Anderson doubled over, nose bleeding, jaw on the verge of shattering. Pure instinct kicked in and he drove a knife toward Michael's body. It failed completely. Michael caught the blade with his bare hand. Anderson stared. His whole hand is shaking. He hadn't known about the gloves, bulletproof vest material, built in. The knife had done nothing. Michael didn't even acknowledge it, just kept talking, said they weren't petty schemers or tricksters. Their way is simple. Family, friends, organization, that is what they fought to protect. Nothing more complicated than that. The honor and code of the underworld delivered in the middle of a fight while holding a knife bare-handed. Then he threw Anderson hard into the ground, blood everywhere. Anderson unconscious on the spot, not a single scratch on Michael. Total rout. The ninth path had spoken. Daniel's side is a different story. Robert arrived, took one look at Daniel's wrist, and asked immediately, broken or dislocated? Daniel said he is fine. What mattered is Valhalla. Robert rolled up his sleeves and said, don't worry at all. Valhalla isn't something that could be taken down right now. He isn't wrong. Michael alone had scattered Jiarang completely. Even the pros mixed into their ranks had met the same fate. The battlefield had shifted entirely. Daniel watched Robert get ready to face Deadline and immediately warned him. This man is a pro, not someone to walk into carelessly. Robert barely registered the warning. Pro or amateur, same thing. Daniel stared at him, keep reminding him he shouldn't face this opponent unprepared. This isn't a street brawl. Robert had already stopped listening. He looked at Deadline the way a cook looks at a problem that just needs the right approach. Daniel is worried. He should have been more worried about Deadline. Robert's response to Daniel's concern is to stop overthinking it. He wrapped his jacket around his injured arm, looked at the dirt bike rider in front of him, and said with an actual wink that all he had to do is deal with him. Simple as that. Deadline didn't find Robert intimidating in the slightest. He gunned the engine and came in at full speed, tires screaming against the road like a taunt, iron rod ready. Same approach that had put Daniel on the back foot all night, except the person standing there isn't Daniel anymore. It is Robert. In that exact moment, something Daniel had said came back to him. How big can it get? What is Valhalla really after? What were they becoming? Deadline closed the distance completely. Iron rod raised, fully committed to the attack. Robert gathered everything he had and punched the oncoming bike. Dead stop. The entire motorcycle halted on impact like it had hit a wall. A horrific crash sound tore through the night, and Deadline went flying, tumbling across the ground along with his bike. Silence. Robert straightened up and asked Daniel what he thought of that performance. Daniel stood quietly behind him, watching his back without a word. Robert looked at the wreckage and said it plainly. Sometimes they use Daniel's methods to get things done, but this time it is different. He turned and stated it firmly. They had to become Daniel. Do not follow him, not work under him. Become him. Daniel said nothing, but he didn't argue either. Harry looked toward him and time rewound completely, back to where everything started. 11 years old. Harry was crying again. His twin brother Daniel walked up, hands on hips, and asked if he is seriously crying again. Hadn't he warned him about that? Harry sobbed harder. Younger classmates had been teasing him. He is scared of getting hurt. Daniel beamed at him like this is the simplest problem in the world. Told him to ignore them. Let them rush in all they wanted. This brother of yours will never lose. He'd handle it. Harry felt safe. Daniel privately began resenting having a brother like that. 4 years later, 15 years old. Different problem. Same Daniel. Urgent announcement over the school intercom. Daniel had gotten into another brawl in the schoolyard. Multiple people charging at him. No joke. The real thing. Harry immediately asked where, and told everyone to move aside. He wanted to watch. The entire student body poured outside to gawk. Harry is already analyzing from the crowd. Is he bleeding? Bleeding means losing. Is anyone crying? Crying means it's over. Then someone pointed through the window. Daniel's underlings were already there, looking like they'd just been worked over thoroughly, and standing in front of them is a group of high school gangsters. Their leader looked like a professional fighter, tall, hands on hips, looking down at Daniel from above like the outcome is already settled. The leader told Daniel's crew he'd given them some advice earlier and isn't sure they'd taken it to heart. Had these juniors understood the point yet? Daniel kept both hands in his pockets and asked the senior one simple question. He'd already graduated, already in high school, so why is he still hanging around middle school? What exactly is going on in his head? Did he need it explained in a different language? The senior muttered that this brat had nerves. Daniel turned cold immediately, said never mind, come outside, no need to embarrass everyone here in the schoolyard. Both sides moved. Then Daniel raised one hand to stop his own crew, told them to step aside. He'd handle this himself. Even if they wanted to help, they'd just get in his way. The students watching from upstairs lost their minds. He is going to fight them alone? Daniel leaned forward, looked the senior dead in the face with a completely calm expression, and said nothing else. The senior didn't look quite as comfortable as he had 30 seconds ago. Rewind slightly. Before the standoff, Daniel had dropped to the ground and offered his most sincere apologies to the seniors. Head down, full bow, said he'd been too stubborn and disrespectful and hadn't shown proper regard. The senior immediately got suspicious. What is wrong with this kid? Why the sudden switch? Daniel looked up with pure admiration on his face. Said he'd heard the senior made it to high school. Really impressive. Must be someone big and important up there, right? The senior scratched his face. Well, yeah, he supposed so. Daniel kept going. Really amazing, senior. Truly. The senior sat down, pressed Daniel's head down with one finger in mock approval, and decided he is starting to like this smooth talker. Said he'd been planning to teach Daniel a lesson like he'd done to his friends, but he is in a good mood, so he'd spare Daniel. In return, his friends would take the beating instead. Fair trade. Sounds good, kid. Daniel burst out laughing, then pulled out a pen and pressed it down hard. The senior had exactly enough time to look confused before the pen drove straight into the top of his foot. The scream that followed is not dignified. Daniel kicked him backward mid-scream and started talking, called him a lucky-mouthed filthy pig, then, completely calm, began explaining. One of his friends ran a paper route every morning. Daniel used to tease him about it, delivering newspapers the old-fashioned way. Turns out he is doing it to financially support his sister. Did it every single day, until this senior broke his left leg. Another senior swung a fist mid-story and screamed at Daniel to stop babbling. Daniel dodged it and kept going. His other friend had found something that made him happy, started helping his mother make kimchi because she ran a kimchi shop. Always brought some to school. Daniel had been planning to get him to introduce his sister and share a meal. That isn't happening now either, because of these guys. On the ground, the senior is still screaming about his foot. The other high schoolers had heard enough. They rushed in simultaneously. One grabbed Daniel's arm, another wrapped him from behind, a third wound up for a clean shot at his completely restrained body. Daniel looked genuinely unbothered about all three of them. Daniel threw his head back hard against whoever is behind him, grabbed another guy's hair mid-motion, and kept talking without missing a beat. His last friend. Why did they have to smash his head like that? He headbutted a high schooler while asking the question. Said his friend's head must hurt like hell. A warning shout rang out from the senior's side. Everyone jumps on them at once. Daniel politely raised his middle finger and invited every single one of them to come at him. Said he'd break every neck in the yard. Then Harry appeared. He launched a kick that separated the guy restraining Daniel clean and landed next to his brother like it is the most natural thing in the world. Daniel stared, actually stunned for once. Asked why Harry is here. Harry is grinding his teeth internally. He is jealous. Genuinely, deeply jealous of his brother. The one who could do what he couldn't. He wanted to be exactly like him. The high school thugs looked between the two of them and slowly processed what they were seeing. There were two of them. Daniel pushed his guy away and asked Harry what he thought he is doing here. Harry explained very earnestly that he didn't think he is cut out for studying at all. Couldn't cram anything into his head, no matter how hard he tried. Not a single fact is sticking. He said this while dropping into a fighting stance with visible excitement. Daniel heard the whole thing and laughed out loud, called him a crazy half-baked thing. Then the sounds of fists and brothers bickering filled the schoolyard simultaneously. Hey Harry, if studying is out, what exactly is the plan? What would he become? Daniel answered that one himself with complete confidence. Their big brother is going to start a business. Hadn't decided what kind yet, but Harry would be chairman. Harry asked skeptically if that is actually true. Back in the present, Harry still wanted to become exactly that. Deadline and his bike were currently spread across the ground like scattered furniture. Harry stood there hugging his arm, looked at Robert and admitted it. Honestly, he thought he could become Daniel, but the road still felt very long. He didn't even know what his brother had become now. What kind of person is Daniel to Robert? Could he actually get there? Robert thought about it for a moment, then dropped to one knee in front of Harry. Said he'd make him into Daniel, the symbol of Valhalla. He'd turn him into exactly that. Harry is completely caught off guard. Back with Michael, something felt wrong. He turned, muttered to himself that maybe it is still too early. The pack of hyenas had poured in and he is telling someone not to be a coward about it. Then a figure with a sharp knife slid silently past behind him. Michael hadn't finished the sentence. Deadline is back on his feet. Daniel stared at him, then turned to Robert and asked who exactly he is. Robert looked at Daniel like that is an unreasonable question. He just sent the man flying. Is he only asking now? Robert explained simply. The motorcyclist had charged at them first. Maybe he is one of Daniel's pro friends. Daniel denied it immediately. He didn't know this man, only that he is connected to the US military somehow. Right on cue, Deadline shouted across at them, demanding to know what they were going to do about his headlight. Robert turned to Daniel and pointed out that he just said this man is US military. The man is shouting about a headlight, in Korean. Daniel looked ahead and sighed. Today is definitely an interesting day. Deadline stood there spinning a red metal bar continuously, ready to go again. Robert stepped forward, completely unbothered, raised his fist and asked casually if he had to go easy. Then Deadline's phone pinged. He stopped mid-throttle and checked the screen immediately. Jirung, 20 million sent as a holding fee. Complete the mission, then head to the location below. Remainder to follow. Deadline read it once, put the metal bar away without a word, left both Robert and Daniel standing there thoroughly confused. He did pause long enough to point directly at Robert and make one thing clear. The headlight. He wouldn't forget that face. Then he revved up and is gone. Robert watched him disappear and said he thought the man wanted to go all the way. Daniel explained, Deadline only move for money. Either the job is done or a better one just landed in his lap. Inside a nearby building, the atmosphere is something else entirely. Too quiet, completely still. Seasoned veterans with years of experience between them, and every single one of them could feel it. The kind of tension that told you a fight is happening that nobody could intervene in. Michael had taken a blade to the back. Blood isn't stopping. Kevin is no joke. One loosened defense and it is over immediately. Michael knew it, but Kevin had taken a hit too. Michael could feel it. This is the moment to finish it. He calculated fast and threw another punch. Kevin startled and stepped back. Then smiled, said he liked this, put on an expression that isn't quite human anymore. Demonic, cold, genuinely terrifying. Said one punch isn't going to be enough to beat him, not even close. Michael's expression darkened. He slid backward trying to create space, and Kevin is already inside his reach. Slashed him several times before Michael could react. Fast, precise, ruthless. The veterans watching from the edges said nothing. Nobody moved. Michael is in trouble and he knows it. Too fast. One strike blocked and another is already coming from a different angle. He hadn't accounted for this. His defense isn't holding and he had no good answer for the speed. Kevin is loving every second of it. He raised both bloody knives with a completely unhinged expression and screamed for more. Come on, try again. His face had crossed the line from dangerous into something that genuinely looked like it wanted to consume people. Michael charged forward and hit him with his second 9-blade strike. Kevin dodged it and taunted him immediately. Not the same anymore, huh? Michael's eyes flashed and he threw a decisive punch anyway. Kevin ground his teeth and swung the knife. Internally, he'd already acknowledged this opponent couldn't be handled carelessly. But Tenjiku's 9-blade drove that knife straight into Michael's own fist. Michael believed one thing completely. He could not be defeated while protecting something. That belief is holding his body together right now. Kevin grabbed his hand and said it coldly. Is that all his strength? Pathetic old man. Then he bent Michael's arm back and snapped it. Michael gritted through the pain without a sound. Kevin followed immediately with an upkick. Come on again. Then a radio announcement cut through everything. Everyone steps back. Withdraw immediately. Client's orders. The knee froze inches from Michael's face. Kevin reached into his pocket and checked his phone. Read the message. His expression went from demonic to furious in about half a second. He watched the Gehring men already walking away and screamed at them, demanding to know where they thought they were going. Anderson explained calmly. Plans changed. Orders came down to fall back. The operation ran into trouble somewhere and they were pulled out. Now, Kevin grabbed Anderson by the hair immediately, asked what retreat meant. Is that his hobby? Why did he keep babbling about falling back? Then released him, said he is being pissed off. The fun is just starting. He got on the radio and told Nicholas directly, this is nonsense. He'd drag the corpse back himself this time. Just let him continue. Nicholas's voice came back immediately. Stop arguing and get over here now. Chairman Charlie had a plan. Charlie is sitting nearby and had thoughts about that. He grumbled at Nicholas that it is a bit odd being told to stay put. Everyone already knew that. He stared ahead with a sly calculating look and laid it out plainly. He hated Valhalla too, obviously. But did anyone actually think crushing Valhalla would solve all the problems here? He had a very specific look on his face that suggested he already knew the answer. Gangster law. That is what this situation actually required. Meanwhile, Alex is nibbling a pastry and losing a battle with his tie. He looked around and asked anyone nearby for help. Why did he have to deal with all of this? Ben turned away in complete exasperation, then came back and tightened it for him anyway. Explained while doing so that what is coming is something very cool and very strong. Important occasion. Dress the part. Behind them, John is already heading out with knives. Ben told him not to bring knives outside. John said, damn it, and whatever simultaneously. Nobody stopped him. John stood there cheerfully admiring the gleaming blade in his hand like a man appreciating fine art. Then someone walked in. Michael and Robert turned to look. Alex and Ben looked over with visible excitement. Daniel arrived with Lucy and surveyed the room with genuine approval. Said they were all dressed better than he expected. Good. Because now they were going to discuss things like real gangsters. He sat down. Cold expression back on, immediately. A while later, Michael stepped out to the car. He demanded to know if after everything he'd done for the gang, they were seriously telling him to go home. Robert flustered immediately and rushed to explain that is completely the wrong interpretation. Daniel definitely didn't mean it that way at all. Michael watched Robert panic for a moment, then laughed out loud. Said he is just kidding. Sorry, he is planning to head home anyway. Tired of the food here. Robert hesitated, then asked quietly if Michael could please stay at Valhalla just a little longer. Michael put a hand on his shoulder, said he knew exactly where that is coming from. Then he looked back at Valhalla and said something that landed differently. Looking at it now, a thought occurred to him. It isn't too late, not for Valhalla, not for Tenjiku either. They could both rise again. He said it with a confident, hopeful smile, then said that is exactly why he had to go back home. Back at Tenjiku headquarters, someone is having a very bad day. The same Baldy Daniel had defeated is now kneeling on the floor, surrounded by men who'd been beaten into complete unconsciousness. He is exhausted, bruised, and demanding to know if the people responsible understood where they were. This is Tenjiku headquarters. Did they think Nineblade is going to let this go easily? The Nineblade members were all on the floor. Someone asked which freak had sent these people. Kevin and Deadline walked in. Then Charlie appeared and put a hand on Kevin's shoulder to stop him, before things escalated further. Charlie looked down at the baldy on the floor and grinned, bared his teeth like he is genuinely happy to see him. Said long time no see. Dear Senior, the baldy's expression suggested this reunion is not welcome. Rewind slightly to Tenjiku headquarters just moments before. Steve is reviewing the books and the numbers weren't pretty. This month came in under last month. The baldy standing beside him took the blame immediately. Steve told him it isn't entirely his fault. His own carelessness played a part too. Then asked simply, overall, were they satisfied with where things stood? Meanwhile, the Nineblade members were in the corner having a blast mocking each other, arguing about who had the least fighting ability, who needed to train harder, who is holding the whole unit back. Loud, rowdy, completely unaware. Then a noise from outside. One member volunteered to check it, stepped out and asked with full authority what exactly is going on and who is going to explain it to him. The guards reported the noise came from the floor below. Someone else noted it sounded like a motorcycle. This is the third floor. The member looked down. Deadline is driving his bike up the stairs, iron rod in hand, the front wheel aimed directly at 3 men standing in the corridor. They had maybe 2 seconds to process this information. Then he crashed straight through their door. He swung the rod mid-ride, and they couldn't get out of the way in time. Blood from the mouth. Nineblade completely on the back foot before the fight even started. These were veterans. People who had survived countless life and death situations. Former fighters are always ready, always calibrated, drawing on years of hard experience to read any threat coming at them. They had never once imagined a man riding a motorcycle up a staircase, swinging an iron rod. That is their greatest obstacle tonight. One member panicked and raised his casted arm to block the swing. Deadline drove the bike casually around the room like he is parking it. Everything in his path got wrecked. Furniture, people, anything not bolted down. The guy is nearly in tears. They were still injured from before. Then a group walked in dressed entirely in black. Deadline glanced at the badges on their jackets. The baldy identified them immediately and shouted for everyone to stop. Genorang. They were breaking the truce agreement. Did they want to make enemies of the entire council? One black-clad man stared at him and asked what this old man is babbling about. Another called out to his crew to clean the place out. Then the baldy ripped off his leg brace and launched a kick at Deadline, called him a dog, said he'd wipe them all out. His foot is still visibly swollen and he is forcing his body to support him anyway. The baldy watched him and felt his stomach drop. His partner's wounds were still open. This is going to be bad. Deadline charged again. The baldy moved without hesitation, grabbed him by the collar, yanked him back, and threw him aside. Then screamed at his partner to run, protect the young master. Get out now. His partner staggered and answered that they'd hold them back. Another Nineblade member is still clinging to Deadline, trying to slow him down. The baldy told him he couldn't do this alone. The other member said he wouldn't be alone. Big Brother is still fighting. Deadline hesitated and looked over. The baldy launched a kick straight at Deadline's head. Deadline braced with the helmet. The baldy grabbed him, steadied his footing, and kept shouting for everyone to prioritize the young master. Get Steve out now. Steve heard that and immediately wanted to stay and help. One of the black-clad men took a blow to the face from nowhere. Features completely warped. The member guarding Steve stepped up and said he'd take over. Said difficult matters were his specialty. His face is soaked in sweat from an earlier wound, and his expression hadn't moved an inch. He got Steve to the car. Young master, get in. Steve panicked and demanded to know what they were doing. They needed to go back and fight. The guard said it plainly. Jorung had started moving. That means Steve is in direct danger. Getting out is the priority. Steve refused to accept it. Running away alone is humiliating. He couldn't just leave everyone behind to die. The guard went quiet for a moment, then said it anyway. If Steve fell, everything they'd built became worthless. Every sacrifice, every fight, all of it, nothing. Steve snapped back. So the answer is just to be a coward? Leave everyone to die and run? Nobody had a good answer for that. Back inside Tenjiku, the Nineblade members were all on the floor. Only the baldy remained, one knee down, barely holding himself up. Charlie looked down at him with a mocking smile and said, what a shame. So this is how Tenjiku fell apart. He'd expected more. Then asked casually where the young master is hiding these days. On the highway, Steve sat in the back seat with his head down and asked the question out loud. What if he is the only one who survived? He'd done everything to rebuild Tenjiku from nothing, and now he is losing it all again. The guard didn't have words for that, said the young master quietly. Steve snapped immediately. Don't call him that. How much longer did he have to be called a young master? Isn't he the boss of Tenjiku? The guard said that isn't what he meant. The car kept moving. Steve kept his head down. A streak of red flashed past the car. Deadline accelerated forward and dropped something from his hand simultaneously. Metal spikes scattered across the road instantly. The guard yanked the wheel trying to avoid them. The car careened, tipped, and slammed hard into the shoulder. Steve went pale and braced against the seat. His brain hadn't caught up yet. The guard's head is already bleeding from the impact. He pushed the car door open anyway. Then he lifted his hand over Steve to shield him from the rain and said quietly that he could only take him this far, to the place where Steve would eventually stand at the top. He believed Steve already knew his own answer. He smiled under the rain, wiped the water from Steve's face and said it plainly. Steve is their boss, Chairman Steve, and they, the Nine-Blade, were Tenjika's swords. That is all he needed to understand. Steve dropped to his knees in the rain right there on the roadside, completely broken. Passers-by slowing down to stare at this man kneeling in the downpour. The guard's words came back. No matter how ashamed you feel, you're a Tenjiku. The decision is yours. Steve forced himself up and kept moving. He showed up at Daniel's place looking exactly like someone who had just survived a car crash in the rain and walked the rest of the way. Daniel, Michael, and Robert turned around in complete shock. Steve is a mess, staggering, mouth open trying to form words that weren't coming out. Michael looked down at him with cold eyes and said Chairman Steve looked absolutely pathetic. Steve had no response to that. He made his decision. Valhalla is the only option. He lowered his head. He begged Valhalla to save Tenjiku. Michael's expression shifted to something like genuine sympathy. He stepped forward and dropped to one knee himself. Said please save them. He didn't care how humiliated he had to be. Daniel reached over and steadied his shoulder immediately. Said oh my, smiled, asked if he'd slipped, told him to be careful, and suggested they all go inside first because Steve is completely soaked through. Steve's anxiety spiked, tried to tell Daniel he is fine, that Nine-Blade had stayed calm, that there is no time. Daniel told him gently to speak slowly. No need to rush. They'd actually been in the middle of a very interesting discussion and still hadn't made a final decision. They were planning to overthrow the council but couldn't agree on where to start. He looked at Steve with genuine curiosity. HS Gang or Jirarong Gang? Who should they start with? Steve stood there dripping wet and speechless. Cut to a room that had been quietly converted into a private hospital setup. Daniel's secretary Lucy is managing a patient's IV drip with complete calm. The patient lay still. Then the camera found the hand. A tattoo. Unmistakable. Very familiar. The kind of familiar that raised a lot of questions about exactly who is in that bed.